Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Binome Manufacturers Elite Endurance Cup Season 6 2021, and it is race number 3 of the quarterfinals. Now you're probably wondering, that's quite a mouthful, what we hear about, and what is it all about with regards to there being 3 races within the quarterfinals. Well, as we're about to reboot the lobby, I'll take you through it all, where we are today, and what you can expect. But I'm your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit, and we hope you're all doing well and you've had a good start to your week as we say hello to those of you in chat, starting off with one Monsieur Zeronic, our good friend of course, who spectates a lot of these events. But as we reform the lobby, what is it all about and what we're here to do today? Well, we're here for what is considered to be one of the growing and increasingly largest manufacturer series across the entirety of the European region, as hosted by the GTS-BOCA community, the French GT Sport, and I believe a wider sim race and esports community. And the whole purpose of this championship is to provide an additional lengthier endurance cup outside of the standard manufacturer series that you will see in GT Sport, to determine, of course, which manufacturer is the best and also which team and which individual driver is the best. So put that all together and you have a fantastic season of racing ahead, and we have races which are 2 hours in length, the 2 hours being there to provide long duration and really push our drivers and their respective car choices to the utter limit. Now we are in the quarterfinals currently, as we say hello to Sweet Lerb in the chat, and we hope you're doing well, Lerb. And congratulations on your win in the 2 hour endurance series for drivers room the other day. But as we're rejoining the lobby, we have 3 stages. We have the quarterfinal stages, we have the semi-final stages, and we also have the grand final. The quarterfinal being made up of 3 races, the idea being that each pair of drivers, they represent a team, and also each individual driver will try to get as many points from each of the races, which are split across 3 pools. So we've got pools A, B and C, and we're broadcasting pool C for you today in the English language, of course. And then after those 3 races are complete, it is the drivers with the highest number of points within a cut-off limit. I believe it is the remaining will be going from effectively what is, and correct me if I'm wrong here, folks, I'm just doing some quick maths in the back of my head. We're going from approximately 18 to 22 pairs. We'll be going down to the best part of what will be 12 pairs for the semi-finals, and then we come all the way down to the grand finals. But to get from the semi-finals to the finals, we have 4 races from there. And after the 4 races in the semi-final, we then have the one big grand final. So that's how it's all broken down. And over the course of the last 2 weeks, we've had races 1 and 2, where we started off at Interlagos, and then we made our way over to, not Interlagos, Catalonia, my apologies, and then we made our way to Interlagos, and now we are at the British circuit, just up the road from where I'm currently based, which is the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit, based in the United Kingdom, in the county of Kent. Only 25 miles outside of London, southeast of London that is. Now, whilst we do have the best part of 12 minutes to go before we get underway with the race, qualifying order is determined by previous race results, and our lobby participants are determined by previous race results being mixed up as well. So you'll see some familiar faces here and also some new faces. Let's get down to the track side and walk you through our drivers and what machines they're going to be driving tonight, as we also make sure that we've got our full race information and our keyboard is working. So, we don't have all our drivers here just yet. We do have a number of drivers who need to ready up and get themselves in the paddock. So our host, GTS-BOCA's Tosh, who is our on-site race steward today and our lobby organiser, as he sets the grid manually. Our pole driver will be a Medi, who we'll come back to shortly. I was going to say TX3 Medi at first, but I'm getting all my initials mixed up. Now it's V1 Medi, the driver here. In fact, he is now down in the paddock. So Medi today, the French driver who many of you will know from Season 5, where he had that dominant display at Le Mans alongside his teammate. The drivers coming across the line in formation on the final lap, and Medi fielding the Nissan GTR GT3, a very strong car, the Nismo machine, and we look forward to seeing what he's able to do. He will be starting on pole tonight. Line up alongside him in second place on the grid as we look around, and it will be a rolling start, of course, as our standard procedure. Will be Nico, who has yet to arrive, so we're not able to introduce Nico. But in third place, starting third in our rolling start procedure, will be one RP Motorsports. You have seen him before, folks, and you'll know him very well, and that is S43, the French driver in the Ford GT, representing Ford in this Manufacturers Cup, and the one who has put in a huge amount of effort to get to this stage in terms of being in a good points paying position, and is looking strong to make his way into the semi-final. It's been a difficult road for S43, we can't fib about that. He's made quite an effort out of it, particularly at Catalonia and to a lesser extent at Interlagos, but the tide is now turning in his favour, and we look forward to seeing what S43 is able to do in the Ford GT tonight. As we look further down the order, we then got GTB's Kimi, the Belgian driver, who you'll recall we've seen him in both our races so far, running out in the Mazda RX Vision GT3 concept in that rather lovely bright green and black liveried Mazda, and you can hear that rotary engine whine its way across the start-finish line there to commence another lap, starting with Paddock Hill Bend. And Kimi in fourth for the purposes of our starting grid tonight, and he will be then followed in fifth place on our starting grid by Cobra 45, the French driver here from TC, who's making his way through Paddock Hill Bend right now, and also in the Mazda RX Vision GT3, albeit Kimi and Cobra are not teammates. You can tell that by their different liveries, and Cobra being the French driver here, of course, who we've known and loved, having had that very strong result at Catalonia, but then we didn't see him last week, and we look forward to seeing more of what he's able to achieve today. We then have V1's Miro, who I believe is still reconnecting to the lobby right now. So we're going to have Miro in here shortly, who I believe is a substitute for Prez tonight. And Miro will be starting at P6 on our grid. And as we look further down the order, and we're just checking with our race broadcasters to see, with our race organisers to see if there's been any changes to the schedule or any alternations. No, none at all. We are good to go still, and we're on track to go. We look further around once again. What the fact we can't see Miro currently, and we're going to introduce our 7th place starter tonight, and that is the other RP Motorsport driver of R91, who's part alongside his teammate here, the two RP Motorsport drivers in formation, both bringing that Ford GT LM Spec 2 test car, of course, and it's R91 who's standing in for JDM. So you're probably wondering where JDM is. Couldn't make the race tonight, so the substitute driver of R91 has been brought onto the field, and we look forward to seeing what R91 can do in his teammate's stead. The two French drivers, of course, looking to represent Ford well, and that Ford GT has been a very different car from what the majority have run, and we'll come back to how we expect it to fare around here shortly. The driver who will be starting off in what is 8th place on our grid then will be BRT Rico Lutetia. I believe that's not quite how you say probably the last name, but we're going to go with that. The French driver from the BRT racing team, bringing the Dodge Viper GT3. Now this is a very different car. This is the first time we've seen the Viper in Pool C, as he goes a little bit wide there and into the wall just before coming down the final stretch into the final corner. That was a bit unfortunate for Lutetia there, as we are experiencing some bugs right now with the lobby by looks of things, particularly with Miro, who's not able to join. But Lutetia will be starting in P8 tonight, and we look forward to seeing what they're able to do in the American Machine, another American Machine out on circuit. Then behind him, we should say, will be Raiko, who I do not believe right now is in on... Oh no, there's Raiko, my apologies. The other GTB driver, also representing Mazda here with the RX Vision GT3 concept. The Frenchman who we have seen time and time again alongside Kimi. And Raiko being a very consistent driver, albeit perhaps not one of the fastest, but delivering the laps where it matters and the consistency paying off. And we look forward to seeing what the Frenchman is able to do here. And he will be joined on the 5th row of the starting procedure, either rolling start procedure, by Giles, or Giles, I believe that's how you say his name, from BRT as well. The French driver here making his way up towards Dingledale right now in the other Dodge Viper SRT at GT3, and again we'll be looking forward to seeing what this American Machine is able to achieve in the hands of a capable French driver, and Giles is a very capable driver from what we're hearing down in the paddock. Our final row of the rolling start procedure will be started by Bilu, but you'll know him as T23T Bilu, the driver who we saw in the Chevrolet Corvette C7 GT3 back at what was Catalonia, as we see Mehdi and Miro having a lot of difficulty joining the lobby. This is not looking too good, but Vilo, the Belgian driver who really was on a recovery drive over the course of Catalonia and made it work, and we look forward to seeing what he can achieve alongside his teammate tonight, the Canadian of Aaron from T23T. We're also running in the Corvette C7. Very powerful American machines here, and a very consistent machine that should do well at Brands Hatch. Now we are going to take a quick flick back to the drivers we weren't able to introduce earlier because they weren't around on the grid at the time. Well, actually we're not going to be able to because we're still waiting for 3 drivers to get themselves comfortably out into the pits. As we see that Miro is re-arriving, as is Medi, and we're hoping that they should be able to clear the issues out of the way. But 5 minutes to go, what's the story then, and what can we look forward to tonight? Well, the race, as per the last two, is a 2-hour endurance race. We have 3 tyre compounds available: the Racing Soft, the Racing Medium, and the Racing Hard. Our drivers are expected to use all 3 compounds at some point in the race. What we have typically seen is one of 2 strategies develop. Either drivers will run the medium and the hard for an extended stint, i.e. the natural tyre life of the tyre, or alternatively they'll only do 1 lap on the tyre and then they'll immediately come into the pits and put the softs back on again. Now, given the length of the pit lane for Brands Hatch is quite short, and we're expecting a tyre change time loss, i.e. coming into the pits and just changing tyres, not taking any fuel, of approximately about 13 seconds here, we're suspecting that the majority of drivers, if not all, are going to go for the 1 lap stop strategy on both the medium and the hards, and in doing so essentially try to utilise as much of the soft tyre as humanly possible. As we say hello to GTS Official in the chat, and I believe GTS Official is one of the GTS-BOCA guys who's helping steward and run all these events, so be sure to say hi to them, and we hope you're doing well, Mr. Official, and we look forward to the action tonight. We've only got minutes to go, but I'm sure it's going to be absolutely cracking, as all our drivers are getting set, and we do have the opportunity to introduce Nico, the other TC driver, of course, Nico JBT, the Frenchman who's running in the Mazda RX Vision at GT3 concept here. And to give you an idea, Nico will be lining up P2, so second place in our rolling start, and the driver he will be behind will of course be Medi, who's not currently readied up, but his teammate Miro is, the German driver here from V1, running around also in that Nissan GTR GT3 Scholzen Motorsport 2013 machine. A wonderful machine, albeit very edgy, very cutthroat in its driving style. You have to master the art of deploying the throttle in it, as I believe we are expecting that Medi should be coming out of the pits any time shortly right now. Medi, of course, will be our driver here who lines up on pole. So that is all of our drivers introduced, and as we come back to the overall format of tonight, so as we say, we're expecting our drivers to most likely only do 1 lap on the medium and the hard, and Brands Hatch in general is a circuit which is very difficult to overtake at. The reason being, as you'll see as we're looking around the circuit right now, following our drivers around, well, it being 9 o'clock in the evening local time here, the difficulty with the circuit is it is very narrow. There's not many places where the circuit opens up to allow you to naturally overtake. So as a result, track position here is very key. And if you can put your car right in the centre of the road, particularly in these GT3 machines where they've got quite wide bodies, particularly with all the aerodynamics on them, what it means is you can essentially become a rolling roadblock into a lot of the corners. You just put your car in the centre and it's very hard for somebody to find a way past. So strategy instead will become critical here in enabling drivers to jump other drivers. And when you're stuck behind someone, you need to use the maximum possible amount of fuel saving. Alternatively, if you can't force a way past, such as up into Druids, which is turn 2, which Cobra is going to be coming up into very shortly. He's going through Paddock Hill Bend right now, following R91 from RP Motorsport here. They come out of Paddock Hill corner, and now up the hill they're going towards Druids, while the only natural overtaking spots on this circuit, because it's actually a little bit wider on entry into Apex here, as we see R91 goes wide and lets Bilo through as well, letting the 2 drivers get some practice laps in. Then you need to reorganise your strategy and adapt on the fly. We've seen it in FIA races, we've seen it in other championships. It is a case that around this circuit, track position really does reward you with results, and it's the strategy which is all the more important. Now, in terms of cars here, well, we do have the Mazda RX Visions, such as featured by the TC drivers and also the GTBE drivers, and the big question about these cars in particular will be, what can they achieve, given the fact that the RX Vision isn't the fastest over a single lap, but it is the strongest in terms of tyre wear by comparison, comfort and driving the car with tyre wear. And Brands Hatch GP circuit, particularly Surtees Corner, which is turn number 4, can prove to be one of those circuits which catches you out on worn tyres. So we're expecting that the Mazda RX Vision will be the stronger car over the duration of stints, whereas the cars such as the Chevrolet here, the Chevrolet Corvette C7, will be reasonably strong throughout, in the fact that whilst it's perhaps not an overall handling car, it does have good power for the straights here and the acceleration zones, and then what handling it does have should be reasonable enough to get it through the more difficult corners such as Paddock Hill, Surtees, Druids and also Hawthorns. Of course, with the Chevrolet in particular, it's all about that short shifting and making sure to save as much fuel as humanly possible. You look further around, and now the big question, of course, will be the Dodge Viper, as featured by the BRT team here. in the fact that it is a car which is a bit of an all-rounder within the front engine rear-wheel drive category, and it is very, very understeery in the fact that this car will literally point into a corner when you brake hard. Be prepared for the car to understeer, and it's a case of forcing the car to turn. What that does mean, of course, is that when our drivers get their foot down on the throttle out of a corner, it's going to be straight and it's not going to experience any snap oversteer. But the downside, of course, with the car will be that it takes them more time to turn the car into the corner, and particularly with corners such as Graham Hill Bend turn 3 and Surtees turn 4, that's where we can expect the Dodge Viper to struggle by comparison, but its straight line speed is no joke. The car, however, which I think is going to be the odd one here is the Ford GT, because whilst the Ford GT is a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, and I believe it's the only mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain car being featured tonight, it's not a car really suited for Brands Hatch because of how heavy it is. Remember, this is a GT1 spec car, which we have increased the weight on and down-tuned the engine to make it perform for GT3 class races. What that means is you've got a very heavy piece of American machinery here with a massive V8 in the rear that wants to just go on the straights, and it also will mean that the rear tyres are going to get lit up, which may actually help it rotate through the corners, but it will prove to be quite unsettled on those low to medium speed corners. Second and third gear are going to be very spicy in that Ford GT once the tyre wear kicks in, as we see R91 coming up to Druids right now, and you're going to see he hangs it on third gear just until he gets to the apex, then he does the downshift to second to try and nurse those tyres rather than use heavy braking on entry. The one car, however, which I think we can look forward to most in terms of a lot of fireworks will be the Nissan GTRs of the V1 drivers here. Now, the Nissan GTR is known as Godzilla for the fact it's got a mammoth turbo, which gives it a huge amount of performance. Now, the thing about the GTR is that it's considered to be one of those cars which has everything. It's got straight line speed, albeit it loses out now in 6th gear compared to how it used to be due to a balanced performance update. It's got handling, it's very strong through corners, particularly medium speed corners, so we can expect this car to be a monster through Hawthorns and also Warwick Bend. However, the big question, of course, will be its tyre wear, because when this car's got tyre wear, particularly on its rear tyres, you do not want to be in 2nd gear and trying to put the throttle down, because otherwise the rear tyres will spin up and that turbo will kick in, and then you have to literally fight the car to keep it straight. And that's the thing that's going to be on our drivers' minds in the case of these GTRs. As I apologise for saying Warwick Bend, I'm referring to Westfield Bend, which is turn 6. But without further ado then, I think we're about to get underway with the race. We're getting the announcement. Everybody is being told that we're starting very soon, and it's going to be a lights out, away we go in a very short order. We're just going to stay with Cobra, and there's the countdown, folks. So 10 seconds to go, 2 hours to wait. Who's going to come out on top by the end of it? Let's find out. So it's a rolling start as warranted earlier, and as we can see, lined up on pole is Mehdi from V1, and behind him will be TC's Nico JVT. But what can the Ford GT of RP Motorsport R91 do from the back of the field? So as the rolling start procedure gets underway, the majority of our drivers should be starting just out of the final corner, and of course with cold tyres everybody's got it all to play for. As we're about to get underway, the countdown begins with 3, 2, 1. Lights out and away we go, and everybody immediately tries to pull over to the left hand side to get onto the racing line for Paddock Hill Bend. We can see that the field is a little bit spread out with some of our drivers starting on the final corner, but Mehdi immediately kicking off with that turbo of that Nissan, charging away from the RX Vision of Nico behind. As we look further back, and we can see some drivers already coming to blows, with Bilu going up the inside of Giles up into Druids at turn 2, and Bilu using the Chevrolet's quick starting performance there versus the Dodge, and he's made a place already as they all come down into Graham Hill Bend for the first time of asking. Now, as they make their way out of this corner, expect some drivers to start weaving just a little bit more to get some heat into those tyres, because their tyres are going to be freezing cold right now as they all make their way in the long charge down towards Hawthorns. Now, this corner on cold tyres is going to be somewhat tricky, as we can see the battle for P4 is starting to heat up, with Kimi being chased down by Cobra 45, albeit Kimi right now I think is on a bit of a fuel saving and tyre saving strategy. as they all make their way through Hawthorns, all relatively clean. And in fact, a number of drivers opting, I think, to just simply take Hawthorns cautiously with the opening lap, because we have, of course, got 2 hours, and that means we have got a lot of racing ahead of us, and it would not be savvy to bin it on the opening lap. That'd be the worst thing you could possibly do. Take it advice from a previous 2-hour endurance racer. But as Kimi makes his way onto the final stretch before the final corner, what we can see is that Cobra right now, I think, is using him as a little bit of a pace car, not closing up too much more. So as they come out of the final corner into complete lap number 1, it is Medi at the moment leading by the region of a second over Nico, followed by RP Motorsports S43, then Kimi being chased by Cobra, then it's Lutetia from BRT who's being chased very heavily right now by Bilu. Bilu making a charge here, and in fact we didn't see that on camera. Bilu up to P7, he's gained a place on Raiko over the course of the first lap, as we've got a battle into what is, well, I thought it was a battle up into Druids, but they seem to have calmed it down, as we do see that Kimi in fact let the other driver ahead of him. That was the TC driver who we didn't quite see there, but he let him pass going up into Druids there, realising that the TC Mazda RX Vision car was a little bit faster on a different strategy. Cobra 45 has gone up to P4 as a result, as we see Bilu really on the attack right now versus the dodge of Rico Lutetia, as they make their way on the long charge now back down towards Hawthorns once again on lap number 2, and behind it Raiko feeling some pressure from Giles right now. And will Bilu go for a move here, or will he just simply settle in? With us in Bilo's shoes, you've got to settle in for Hawthorns, because 2 do not go into that corner, it's only 1 at a time, and Bilu looking all over the back of Lutetia. I think a move's going to be coming on within the next lap or so, because this is a lot of pressure from the Chevrolet driver very early on in the race. Clearly the Belgian wants to get past as soon as possible and does not want to be held up by the Dodge, but look how the Dodge can just plant itself in the middle of the circuit and then pull onto the racing line and essentially force Bilu into a situation where he can't make a move. As we see, Miro has made a mistake somewhere, because that car is very far down the order, and I'm not sure what's happened to Miro, but he seems to have lost out already on the opening lap, and Miro struggling, it would seem, for grip in that car in the Nissan GTR as he comes to the end of lap number 2. But meanwhile up front, his teammate Medi is pulling a gap out. 1.8 seconds is the gap now that he has over the field. As you can see, looking further back, we have got Lutetia under a lot of pressure once again from Bilu, but Bilu just not going for it, and Giles backing off of Raiko by the looks of things there. I think he's backed off a little bit from Raiko, as we do a jump on board with Giles right now, and we're riding on board from the Dodge Viper's perspective, and we can see that as he's going through these corners, look at how the RX Vision just has the handling through, say, Graham Hill Bend, and watch through 30s here. You see he has to tuck it in so tight to the apex and get it down to second gear, because the Viper just wants to understeer as much as humanly possible. We talked about that earlier on, and that's the frustration, because look how the Vision gets so much better launch speed out of 30s by comparison, and it's going to be the differential between those two cars. And I think Giles just has to settle down right now and realise he's not going to be able to get the place by being the better car round Brands Hatch on 1 lap pace versus Raiko. But we will wait and see, of course, as meanwhile ahead of them, his teammate, the other Dodge Viper of Rico Lutetia, being pressured really heavily by Bilu right now, and Bilu all over the back of the Frenchman. And you do have to wonder right now whether Bilu is doing the right thing and just settling behind, and I think he's going to go for the move. Going up into the final corner then, and it's going to be Bilu on the inside, and Lutetia doesn't fight it too hard. He simply just tucks back in behind, and Bilu gains another position. 3 places gained in 3 laps, and Bilu now up into P6. Nice work by the Belgian, but he's got plenty more to go. And will we expect a comeback from Lutetia this early on? I don't think so, to be honest. I think the Frenchman's going to play it safe and just try and use the Chevrolet in front of him to do a little bit of fuel saving. But then again, he's looking very feisty out Paddock Hill up into Druids right now. That does seem to be where the Dodge is a little bit stronger than the Chevrolet, or at least on this lap, and now they make their way down to Graham Hill once again. As we look further down the field right now, and we can see that Aaron, the Canadian driver, the other T23T driver, hasn't really gained too much on the opening couple of laps, and Miro is now catching up to the back of him as they all make their way up towards 30s and beyond. But the field is spreading out a little bit up towards the front, but I think Aaron is going to be under a lot of pressure from Miro within the run to Hawthorns, because Miro literally kicking that car around the circuit like it is nobody's business, and I think that GTR is going to have the legs here versus the Chevrolet as they make their way in the long run down to Hawthorns. And there he goes, Miro on the inside, Aaron on the outside, and Miro makes the move, and Aaron does not fight it too heavily. I think realising that Miro's got the pace and Aaron just needs to settle on with his race right now, and it would have been a foregone conclusion. I think if he'd fought it too hard, he would have only scuppered his race opportunities. But right now, the other GTR of Medi 59 is just running away with this. 2.6 seconds is the lead, but of course remember that GTR has strong pace initially on its tyres, but once it starts to get that tyre wear in, it it's going to be a different story versus the Mazda RX Vision of Nico JVT. And we're only 6 minutes into this race, folks. Anything can happen, but the gaps are starting to show a little bit already, and we're going to keep our eyes on it. Now, whilst we do have a moment, we're going to look through the field once again, and what we can see is whilst Bilo is pulling a little bit away from Lutetia, just very gradually right now, the gap opened up by about a tenth a lap. We can see behind that Raikko is being reeled in by the other Dodge of Giles right now, the other BRT driver doing a very good job of putting pressure on and getting as close as possible. And I think this is working out in the Dodge driver's favour in all honesty. I think he might even go for a move here. Up into Surtees they go. Giles on the inside, Raikko on the outside, but this is going to be so painful for Raikko. You can see he had to lift out of the throttle when he wanted to get it back down after reaching the apex of Surtees, because the Dodge just understeers the corner and taking such a tight line. You can see how much time it's cost him, because now RP Motorsports R91 has caught right up to the back of Raikko. And as we jump on board with the Ford GT driver, you're riding on board with RP Motorsports R91 right now. You can see that Ford GT, whilst it's not the strongest car around here, if Raikko loses so much momentum out of Surtees in the run to Hawthorns, thanks to Giles' very clever overtake there, it means that the Ford GT is now in striking distance of Raikko. But of course, where's the Ford GT going to go for it? Because through all these medium speed corners, Raikko in the Mazda RX Vision could just simply pull away. There's not really anywhere for the Ford GT to utilise its straight line speed. So I'll be honest with you folks, if I was in R91 shoes right now, I'd just simply look at fuel saving as much as possible, because the nice thing about that Ford GT is you are able to short shift it very early. It's got a huge amount of torque and engine power in the lower RPM bands, but we'll have to see what R91 decides to do, as now the two Dodge drivers are running P7 and P8, and we've got Raikko in P9, R91 in P10, and then behind Miro getting very sketchy out of Paddock Hill, but the German driver from V1 in that Nissan GTR now closing up on P10 at a very fast rate of knots. That GTR looks possessed. It is a man determined to get into that top 10 as soon as possible. But whilst we do have that very quiet period right now, well, I was going to say we have a quiet period, but I think everybody is clustering up a little bit. In fact, Raikko having a difficult run there out of Surtees versus R91, and I think there might have been a little bit of a mistake under braking, but you can see R91 is very close to the back. Now, will he go for a move here? I don't think he will, because he'll realise that Raikko is going to be stronger as they make their way up into Westfield here at turn 7, and as they make their way into the corner, oh sorry, turn 6, correct myself here, and as they make their way into the corner, it's a case that they'll settle back down. Now they're into Dingle Dell, up into turn 7 they go, and this is where R91 needs to stay back and just consolidate his momentum, because through these corners in particular, that RX Vision will just pull away. And you can see that gap, it opens back up to approximately half a second, and now he's got to do it all again on the next lap. But now he has got a fast charge in Nissan GTR in the form of Miro chasing after him, as we see that T23T's Aaron is 6 seconds down the road in last place right now, but probably going for a slightly different strategy. And we will come on to tyre selections very shortly for you folks, but just bringing in the rest of the fight right now as Miro goes for a move on R91. Now, what on earth has happened there? Did R91 get it wrong, or did he just simply say to Miro, you know what, you're faster than me, you can have the place right now, because there's no point me losing time fighting you? Let's find out. So as they're making their way on the straight up towards Paddock Hill Bend for turn number 1 on lap number 7, I think it's going to be the case R91, well, R91 took the race, and I think he had to react to Miro. I think it was a case he left the door so wide open, Miro said, sure, why not R91? You've left the door open, I'm going to take it. And 91 had to react, and look at Miro, he's over the back of that RX Vision and immediately staying to the inside up into Hawthorns he goes. And as he makes his way into the corner here on the brakes, it's a bat on the brakes, and well, it looks as though Raikko says no, he is trying to defend, and Miro now has to go for it into Westfield Bend here. Not a typical overtaking place in GT3, but you can see that Miro has got the move done, and it has cost the pair of them a good amount of time to Giles up front, but Miro is not fazed by that and is now charging after the Dodge Vipers ahead of him. So it's all changed right now in the lower positions, and Miro's the man making the moves up the field. Now, of course, I think Miro's going to be costing himself a lot of tyre life by doing this, but perhaps it's the case that Miro recognises that he's going to have to keep his stint short and sweet and needs to gain as much time as possible whilst the tyres are in their good condition. And now, speaking of tyres, let's give you a quick look back on what tyres everybody's running on this opening stint of the race. So we can see that our race leader Medi is running on the Racing Soft in reasonably good condition right now. Behind him is, of course, TC's Nico JVT, who is running on the Racing Soft as well, albeit the tyres are in much better condition by comparison to the GTR, albeit that rear left is quite similar to the GTR's. We can then see the S43 from RP Motorsport in the Ford GT, currently running in P3 and making a good time on those Racing Softs, and behind him is TC's Cobra 45 Racing Softs as well. We then got P5, it's GTB's Kimi, who's on the racing soft, so it should have taken a significant amount of wear on the front right now. I think that car's quite front-loaded in terms of its brake balance, and that's why it's got so much wear. And then in P6, we've got Bilou on the racing softs as well, the Belgian driver, who's being followed by BRTs as well. Actually, we're going to come back to that in a second, because we have got a battle on our hands here, folks, and it looks as though Giles is under a huge amount of pressure from Miro, so Godzilla charging after the American Viper, and who is going to be leading as they come on to lap number 9? I think it's going to be the case that Giles, if he doesn't make a mistake, as Miro goes wide there at Dingle Dale, and he just keeps it under control, but he's got to be so careful as Miro, because if you put a wheel on the grass there, the car becomes so unsettled, and Miro on a charge, look at him on the inside into the final corner, but he can't quite get the overlap and has to back out of it, and Giles just shuts the door in time, but you can see that the GTR driver is going literally for every opportunity. They come up into Paddock Hill, and it's Miro on the inside once again. It's a battle on the brakes, and Giles has no counter to it. He can't outbrake the GTR of Miro, and Miro up into P8. But this momentum is huge from Miro. The V1 driver is just on a charge right now. And you do have to wonder how long it's going to be before those shenanigans that are taking the life out of his tyre are going to come back to haunt him. Of course, if they do, perhaps Miro has prepared for all this. And I reckon all the drivers have, of course, prepared for worn tyres, folks. They put in a lot of practice for this, but Miro right now really using the strengths of that GTR and the tyres he's got at his disposal to their maximum possible potential. And before Miro interrupted our tyre analysis, let's come back and just check. We do have BRT of Rico Lutetia in P7 right now on the racing softs, and nursing them at actually a very good rate there is the Dodge Viper driver. Behind him, of course, is now Miro on the racing softs as well, and you can see how he's had to abuse quite a bit of tyre life in order to make those moves, charging his way up the field. And then in P9 right now, we've got BRT's Giles on the racing softs, and behind him we can see we've got Raikko on the racing mediums. So this is why Raikko has been falling down the order a bit and losing a bit of time, using those racing mediums for a significant stint. And he's got RP Motorsports R91 all over his 6 right now, as we see that RP Motorsport on the racing medium as well. And then last but not least, we have got Aaron, who's got damage to the rear of car. So there must have been a collision earlier on with somebody, and he's on the racing softs trying to make up time. But we believe there's a battle going on right now into Paddock Hill Bend, and it is Miro versus Lutetia. And as they make their way up the hill here, I think it is the case that Miro has made 2 more places on 2 laps, and is looking to try and get a 3rd place off of Bilo. We're just going to watch this as it continues, folks, and look at Bilo right now getting a very poor run out of Druids down into Graham Hill, and Miro all over the back of the Belgian, the German on a strike right now in that GTR. They're coming up into Surtees. He's got the inside line, and he's going to certainly put it there. And Lutetia goes wide and spins at Surtees. It's chaos right now as everybody's starting to get a little bit frisky, but Lutetia getting it all sorts of wrong as we see Aaron coming into the pits to repair the damage on the car. And what happened to Lutetia there? Let's find out. So as we ride on board here, does he just go a little bit too deep on the brakes? He does. He goes onto the curb, and the car gets pulled onto the grass. And that is a very frustrating place to be, because that is going to cost him a huge amount of time. As we hop away from Lutetia, of course, there's plenty of time for him to recover. He was running in a good, what was P7, dropping to P8 with Miro getting past. But Miro right now is the man on a mission. He's got past so many drivers over the course of the opening 10 laps. He hasn't had the best of starts, so his opening lap was not the greatest of laps. But Miro right now, well, the German is absolutely flying. And, well, his teammate is on the fastest lap right now. He's got the fastest lap of 122.091. And Miro's last lap, for comparison, folks, was 123.2. And that's with all the fighting. So only 1.2 seconds off of his teammate with all the fighting and more worn tyres. Miro really is the man on a mission. And it is incredible to watch. But as we look further front right now, we can see that Cobra and S43 getting closer together. The gap between these two has been coming down over the last couple of laps. And I think it is the case that S43, whilst he made those opening gains versus Cobra, Cobra is now able to utilise the better endurance of the Mazda RX Vision in terms of its tyre life to come back at the Ford GT later in the race. We said that the Ford GT was going to be one of those cars which would struggle with a bit of tyre wear because of how heavy the car is by comparison with the RX Vision, which is very kind to its tyres. But still, we'll wait and see, because one thing it is for Cobra to catch up to S43, it's another for him to get past S43, and we know how strong S43 is at placing his car all over the circuit. He'll make that Ford GT hard to pass if he so desires, and Cobra 45 are to rise to the occasion to find a way through. as they both make their way up into Paddock Hill once again for the 12th time of asking, and you can see that that gap is gradually closing up. But of course, Cobra not attacking too hard right now. I think he's in two minds. Will he try and use S43 to fuel save? Will definitely prove valuable. Of course, once he starts getting too close to the back of S43, that's when he'll need to back it off. And as they make their way around the circuit right now, and we can see that looking around, Mehdi in a place of his own right now, and 7.1 seconds up the road. Mehdi's just running away with this. Nico, meanwhile, in that 7.2 seconds gap down. Well, I think Nico right now will be hoping that Cobra can get past S43, so that way he's got his teammate behind him. And you can see that S43 is being closed in so slightly lap on lap, but it is a case that Cobra is in the more comfortable spot, and S43 just starting to experience little moments where the car's starting to get away from him a little bit, and you see it again there at Westfield, just running up onto the curve a bit more than perhaps he would like compared to Cobra. And that is of course the situation with that Ford GT, as he almost goes off there at Dingle Dell. He's literally running that car on the limits right now as S43, and well, give credit to him of course folks, because he is pushing that car to its utmost. And you can see by having such a good run through Dingle Dell up into the last couple of corners, he's opened that gap back out to the best part of half a second. And as he goes on to another lap number 13, Cobra will catch up all again. And as we ride on board with Cobra here, in fact, we switch to the hood cam right now. S43 goes very deep into turn one, and you can see now that the tyres are starting to go off, and it is indeed the case that Cobra is going to be getting ready to strike. The venomous snake of Cobra will be coming after him as much as possible as they make their way down towards Graham Hill Bend. And we say hello to Nibaf23 in chat. Hopefully I've said your name correct, as we continue on with the racing here, and we look further around the field, and S43 really is the one in the closest battle right now with Cobra. As we look down the order just for the time being, and we can see right now that Giles in P7, what of his teammate making that major mistake earlier on, and really the lead BRT driver just simply holding on at the moment and doing a good job of putting in the laps. But you can see that R91 and Raiko are gradually closing up behind him. The RP Motorsport and GTB drivers are both sensing that the Dodge Viper is starting to fall a little bit off the pace as we look back down the order, and we can see once again how close Cobra is and closing up to S43. And now as they come into turn 8 once again, watch how this gap will start to open up, and this is where the RX Vision just doesn't have the legs versus that Ford GT. But of course for S43, he's got to use so much fuel in order to make sure he can sustain this gap, and that's where the trade-off between these two cars comes. Literally, S43 is driving a fuel guzzler right now, which loves straights but doesn't like corners. Conversely, Cobra is driving a car that loves corners but it doesn't like straights, but it does love its tyre wear by comparison, mind you. And it's just a case that these two, well, they've been literally nose to tail like this, and well, I think Cobra could actually lean out and touch the rear of S43's car now because of how close he is getting back to the back of that Ford GT. And could we be expecting a pit stop sometime soon? And if we look at the Ford GT's tyres by comparison with Cobra's, you could see it is an entire gulf of difference. It's a canyon between the two in terms of tyre wear, and I would say that Cobra has got about 3 laps less tyre wear by comparison to S43, and it's showing right now, although the fuel's quite similar between the two of them. And I think that means we can expect them both to pit at roughly the same time, as in the pits right now, or coming out of the pits, is Lutetia, who's coming out of the pits onto the set of mediums after that disastrous opening stint down in P11. But as we continue to look around, we're just coming back to that fight for P3 right now. We will hop away for it very shortly. Can we expect S43 to come in on this lap? It will be almost 20 minutes into the race, and surely he's got to be considering a pit stop sometime soon, because we are starting to come into that pit window. Every 20 minutes we'd expect the softs to expire, roughly 20 to 25 minutes. But will we see a pit stop from S43 as he makes his way into the final corner? Does he go for the really tight cutting line? He goes out for one more lap at least. So S43 trying to go as long as possible in that Ford GT, and if he can make it last, it's going to prove invaluable, I reckon. As we look further down the order, then we can see that hold on a second. Well, it's a good time we look. Well, Kimi was coming into the pits anyway, but Miro was closing up. So Kimi into the pits on what was P5, releasing Miro up into P5 right now. And the German is on a charge still in that GTR. As we can see that meanwhile up front, no change between our two battlers for P3, although S43 does go a little bit deep into Graham Hill. But Kimi and Raiko into the pits. In fact, we've got 3 drivers coming into the pits right now. Can we expect Giles to also be coming in? No, he stays out and goes long. Kimi Kimi going onto a set of mediums right now and coming out, and he's just made it out, I believe, in front of Giles. It's going to be very close between these two, and Kimi staying on that tight line as much as possible, and Giles getting a good run there. It's going to be side by side up the hill. Now this is going to be critical for Giles. He needs to get past Kimi, and he's done it. So Kimi will go onto those mediums. Surely Kimi right now will be thinking about perhaps reverting to a one-lap stint on those mediums because of Giles being ahead, or will he just expect Giles to get out of the way come the end of this lap, because Kimi will be the faster driver. What, Giles on a set of very heavy... Oh no, Giles, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. Giles actually on those mediums right now, and I think he's only doing a short stint on them because Giles pitted only what was about moments ago. We didn't quite catch it on camera, and our race leader has come into the pits of Medi, which releases Nico JVT up into P1 as Medi has come into the pits, put on a set of hards and gone out again and not put any fuel in the car. So Medi coming back out in P2 as Cobra does not pit. S43 into the pits, and will S43 go for the tyre change and no fuel? He does indeed, and what's he put on? He's put the hards on. So I think the majority of our drivers here, folks, will be going for the one lap magic on the medium and the hard as Miro is coming into the pits, and we can expect the same. So it's pit stops up and down the field right now as Miro in fact putting fuel in the car. So I think Miro right now is doing the reverse of everybody else. He's going to go long on the softs until probably the end or the midpoint and try and gain his way up the field. And well, Miro I think has picked a very odd time to do this because he's going to come out right in the middle of battle here. He's going to come out in P8 alongside Kimi, and as they make their way into paddock hill, they're clipping with one another here, and Kimi and Miro side by side, and Kimi can't get past Miro. So Miro's got himself out ahead of one of the two drivers who's gone for longer stints. And remember, Kimi right now is on a set of racing mediums and has actually fueled to go longer, so this is something which is a bit of a saving grace for Miro. He's been able to get ahead of the GTB driver, and he needed to, because that would have cost him valuable time. As we see coming out of the pits right now is Raiko in P11. As we look further down the order, we can see that Aaron, of course, on that very different strategy, what the damage he picked up on his first stint, so he had to pit early. And the other T23T driver of Bilu, who we haven't really seen too much of recently on camera, Bilu running in P10 right now as Medi comes into the pits to get rid of his hards to go on to what I suspect will be the medium for one lap. We can see Bilu right now coming to the end of a stint. He's on those racing hards, so surely he's going to be pitting very soon, unless he's put, well no, he's put a lot of fuel in the car, so perhaps Bilu here is going for a long stint on the hards, but that's going to be approximately 1.8 seconds down on a soft lap at least in that Chevrolet Corvette. So I think Bilu right now is only doing the one lap here, but what it does mean up front is that with the Mazda RX Vision drivers of TC, Nico and Cobra both going long on their opening stints, they're P1 and P2, and S43 after all is said and done is in P3, but of course Medi now having pitted to do the hard, he's come back out on a set of softs and he's put fuel in the car, so he'll be doing his medium later, and Medi will now be charging after our race leaders once again, and he'll need to clear them or get as close as possible to them, because if he does not, then he's going to find himself effectively one stint behind the leaders right now. But as Medi makes his way out of Surtees, I think he can see in the distance what he's got to go after, as Miro has cleared Kimi. That's happened off camera. Actually, no, my apologies, that's happened on camera, I should clarify. And RP Motorsports R91 now chasing after Kimi. But it all has been chop and change up and down the order as R91 on a set of hards right now, and I think he'll be clearing those hards in very short order, just burn some more fuel out the car. And the BRT drivers are once again together on circuit, albeit with 9.6 seconds distance between them in P8 and P9, as our race leader of Nico JVT is into the pits and his teammate Cobra makes his way onto another lap, and Cobra continues to go around here. So will it be the case that Nico comes out ahead of S43 and Medi? Let's find out. Well, I think he's going to clear S43 is going to clear Nico, but what about Medi? Now, this is important because this is going to influence the race lead for quite some time. And we see Medi making his way into paddock hill, and he does clear Nico. He just gets out ahead of Nico, and that is not good news for the French driver of Nico, in the fact that he really needed to come out ahead of Medi and hold him up for as much as possible, because now Nico is effectively, whilst he's on his second stint, he is a tyre option down, in the fact that Medi has already cleared his hard and has cleared Nico once again, whereas Nico still has to do both the hard and the medium. So Medi right now is on a mission to win this one, and he is doing everything right. And Miro, his teammate, has just set the fastest lap of a 1:21.996. Literally only a couple of thousandths between Miro and his teammate for fastest lap right now. As meanwhile, down in P9 in the pits is BRT's Giles, and his teammate is in the pits behind them. They're doing the double stop, and they're both putting the fuel in and getting off of that hard tyre. As what has happened to Miro here? He seems to have got it all sorts of wrong coming out of Surtees. He's regained control of the car, but that's cost him a huge amount of time. So you're going to see here, Miro's going to make his way into the braking zone for Surtees. And does he go deep here? No, he keeps it. Does he get on the power too soon? I think he does. He goes on the power too soon, clips the wall and ping-pongs his way onto the grass on the left-hand side, and then has to regain control of the car. So that's the story behind Miro doing a little bit of rallycross there, as Cobra finally comes into the pits from what was at the time P1, but he's now going to drop down to P4. Going for the tyre change here, and he comes back out on a set of softs, and he's put some fuel in the car by the looks of things as well. As we look around the field, and we can see that it's S43 now in the race for lead, but S43 on that racing hard tyre, and I think we can expect a pit stop. If not on this lap, it'll be on the next lap, and I think as a result, Medi will have pulled a smart one here in terms of strategy and essentially cleared his competitors to the race lead and got the hard out the way in that time period as well. But it could all chop and change, of course, and remember, whilst for some cars here, the racing hard and the racing medium tyre are not optimal to run for a long stint, in the case of our Mazda RX Vision drivers, they may choose to do so, and that could flip the tables upside down once again, with Nico only what is 2 seconds down the road from Medi, and Medi right now being on the need to get past S43, who is going to hold him up here through the run out of Dingledale all the way down to turn 8 and then up to the final corner at turn 9, because remember, you've got the dirty air here plus the fact you've got the natural flow of Dingledale, which is not very wide, and now up into turn 8 they go, and then braking into this corner. You'll see that Medi has to effectively back out a little bit as S43 gets a little bit of snap oversteer, but I think also gets out the way of Medi there, because I think he recognises he's coming into the pits and there's no need for him to be fighting. And does S43 pull all the way over? He doesn't, in fact, so he's going to go one more lap, but I think it'll be the case that he also lets Nico through and makes it quite easy for the drivers, because he can't afford to lose time in his overall battle with Cobra 45 right now. Nico and Medi are on a different planet right now compared to the battle between S43 and Cobra. Now, as we look further around the field, we can see that in terms of our T23T drivers, Bilu in P9 right now, after Giles took his pit stop, of course. Well, in fact, both of the BRT drivers took their pit stops. What can we say about Bilu? Well, his opening quarter of this race has been quite a strong one in the Corvette. Of course, it wasn't the best of starts, but he's made a lot of places. In fact, he did have a good start, I should correct myself, but there he gets it very wrong, coming out of Dingledale, and it's gone sideways into turn 8, but he just catches the car. Bilu literally having to grasp at every little bit of grip there to keep the car steady. That's not going to do the tyres any good. I think Bilu's heart rate right now is going to be going through the roof. But what a drift indeed as he's caught the car, and that is phenomenal. Bilu almost seen his race go to the bin and his life flashed before his eyes, but he's got it back under control. Well caught, that man. As we see further down the order right now, I think we've got a number of cars where it's Aaron who is now going to be lapped. He's the first driver to be lapped, what we've been running in P12. And as he makes his way out to the final corner to go on to lap number 20 for him, it'll be Medi and the race leaders coming around to begin lap number 21. But now spaced out a little bit, as I think RP Motorsport is into the pits. He's completed that hard stint, and now he is moving on to what is likely to be a refuel and a new soft stint. So now the question will be, of course, is where does he fare versus Cobra? Well, Cobra has jumped him at this point in time, with S43 choosing to go longer on that set of hards and losing time by doing so many laps on the hards. But of course, it has been that he should reduce the amount of time he needs to spend out on circuit, and therefore he has to do less stops later in the race, whereas Cobra's got more stops to do now. So that's how it's going to flip. And RP Motorsport going to a set of mediums and 100% fuel here. And as he makes his way out of the pitch, you're going to see his teammate R91 has got past here, but taking a wide line in case he got in the way of his teammates. So the two teammates communicating with one another quite clearly there, because otherwise R91 would have taken the natural racing line. And I think S43 is going to be telling R91 to get out the way, or R91 is going to be getting a call from the team principal, because as they make their way into Graham Hill right now, S43 needs to clear the drivers ahead of him as soon as possible in this medium tyre. It's going to be fresh. He's going to have a full tank of fuel in the car, and he'll be able to go charging after what is effectively the battle for P3 versus Cobra 45. But right now, as they make their way in the run down towards Hawthorns, the extra tow he's going to get off his teammate will be very useful to him. As they come up to Hawthorns here, he's not close enough to affect a move, as they all charge around for another lap once again. As he makes his way up here to Westfield, the question will be, of course, what can S43 do to counter the performance of the RX Visions? Well, I think it will be more of a case of in his shoes, he just needs to get his head down, and really it's for Cobra and Nico to figure out how long they can push these tyres right now, as they're both making their way up into Druids Bend once again, turn number 2. And well, it's going to be a case that for them it's formation flying right now, as Medi is 6.2 seconds up the road, and Medi with a 121.8 on the previous lap there. That is a new fastest lap by the region of a 10th and a half, almost 2 tenths in fact, over his teammate. Medi is on a charge right now. I think he recognises if he can get these good laps in that GTR, he can take the pressure off himself later on, as R91 comes into the pits from what was P6 out on circuit at the time. They're putting the fuel in the car, and that releases his teammate S43 up into P6, and now he's on a mission, of course, to get after that top 5. But what we can see in that battle for P7 right now, Raiko has been jumped by R91 with all the pit stops that are going on, and R91 has opted for another set of racing softs. Raiko, meanwhile, behind him is on the racing soft as well, albeit they're a little bit less fresh, and Raiko will want to get past R91 here before that Ford GT has got its tyres up to temperature, because otherwise Raiko is going to have to essentially try and chase after a car that is expected to be slow around here, and that's the last thing Raiko will have wanted to see. It's a Ford GT come out literally just in front of him. Of course, the benefit will be in the run down towards Hawthorns here. He will get the tow, and that will help him on the straight if he's able to stay within that 3/4 of a second zone, which he's not right now. So R91 getting a good run out of Surtees versus Raiko there. So Raiko's now got to try and shake things up, because he has lost out with this opening set of pit stops. As we look further around the field, in fact, with half an hour gone already, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick sip of water, and then we're going to give you a quick summary of what has happened thus far. As we can see, BRT Rico Lutetia moving out the way of Medi there, back marker effectively, and now a lap down on our race leader. So, after the opening 30 minutes, what's the story been? Well, this man right here, V1's Medi, 59, racing in the Nissan GTR, started on pole and has been leading this race by quite some margin. The gap at the first set of pit stops was in the region of 7 seconds. It's now up to 8 seconds as he's on what is effectively his third stint, with the fact he opted to do a 1-lap stint on the racing hard, and he is on a mission right now, is Medi. Behind him, it's the TC pair of Nico JB2, who started second and still in second, opting to go much longer on their stints because of the tyre life strength of the Mazda RX Vision versus the other cars we're seeing today. Nico in P2, and 5 seconds down the road is his teammate TC Cobra at 45. Cobra in a battle, we believe, with RP Motorsports S43, who we'll come on to shortly. Cobra is 16.7 seconds ahead of V1 Miro. Now, Miro had a disastrous start to the race, dropping all the way down the order, and has essentially had to pull himself all the way up from last position up the field. And Miro's had some shaky laps in that Nissan GTR. The potency of its turbo seemingly getting the better of him on some corners, particularly his runoff at Surtees earlier on. But Miro is in P4 right now, and really has jumped up through the field by sheer aggression and overtakes, and really trying to wring the neck of that car as much as possible. He is 5.6 seconds ahead of GTE's Kimi in P5, the Belgian driver, having started in the midfield, running a good set of stints right now. He's running on the racing medium for his second stint, clearing his tyre out of the way gradually, and he has got RP Motorsports S43, our Ford GT driver here in P6, who's on a set of racing mediums right now, chasing after Kimi and RP Motorsport in that Ford GT, having to wrangle the car around the circuit, but doing a good job. It's not his first rodeo, clearly. Behind him is his teammate, 23 seconds down. That is R91, who's managed to jump Raiko through the first round of pit stops. R91, of course, on that racing soft tyre, much like Raiko behind him. The second Ford GT driver doing his utmost right now in order to try and keep the GTB driver Raiko at bay. Raiko in P8, the Frenchman in that Mazda RX Vision, trying to go long on his tyres, but it hasn't worked out so far in terms of the overall strategy. And then we come on to the first of the two T23T drivers, 6 seconds down the road, and that is Bilu making his way up through Surtees right now on lap 24. The Chevrolet driver doing a very nice job at making his way up through the field on the opening stint and really settling into the strategy, and we do expect more from the Belgian as the race progresses. And then we've got the two BRT drivers of Giles and Lutetia. Giles in P10 right now, 5 seconds down the road from Bilo in the Dodge Viper, and then it's his team at Lutetia in P11, 11.7 seconds down the road after Lutetia had that disastrous runoff at Surtees, of course, on his opening stint, which ruined all the hard work he had put in. And it's T23T's Aaron, who is a lap down on the majority of drivers right now and 53 seconds down on Lutetia. In last place, the Canadian in the Corvette, doing his utmost to bring the car home, and who knows, he could gain some positions later on if we experience any unexpected retirements or there's a major instance. But we should point out, ladies and gentlemen, what we didn't see on camera but we have heard reported to us is that Nico has just come in for his second stop, and Nico has opted to switch to the racing medium, so going to his first mandatory tyre here is the Frenchman. He's come out in P4 right where he'll want to be because he's got Miro only 3 seconds up the road from him, and Miro, I believe, is coming to the end of his stint right now. In fact, Miro has hit a wall somewhere, so Miro has picked up even more damage on the car. Goodness me, Miro. I mean, the man is going on an absolute mission and charging, but the damage he's getting on the car, he's going to have to get that repaired in the pits, and surely he's going to have to get that fixed at the end of this lap because that car does not look stable right now, and if he can't get it fixed, it's only going to get worse. But Miro will wait and see. Does he come into the pits? No, he stays out. Miro is fighting the car. The damage, he is literally fighting. He's digging deep right now. And let's take a look at his lap time. That last lap was a 24.0 versus Nico on a fresh set of racing mediums. What was a 1:27.1. In fact, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, that's not an accurate lap because that's his out lap. So we'll wait and see what he achieves at the end of this lap. As we see in the rear view camera shot, S43, Kimi coming to blows, coming up in towards Druid's Bend then, and it's S43 on the inside. And I think Kimi there did put up too much of a fight. I think he recognised in the end the Ford GT driver would come through. But of course, S43 has had to spend the best part of 5 to 6 laps sizing up that move and getting close enough to Kimi. And I think Kimi will be pleased with the fact that he's been able to keep S43 back for a little while. It just chops off some time from S43 and gives Kimi a greater opportunity of getting into what we believe will be the top 5 by the end of tonight. As we look further back down the order and we see Aaron letting a number of drivers through now as they come through to lap him. Aaron doing a very sensible thing there, backing off out the run of Paddock Hill. Ben staying on the inside. Good place to let people through, of course. And as they all make their way down towards the hill, it's a case of resuming the race. But I really do wonder with regards to Miro right now what he'll be able to accomplish. I mean, don't get me wrong, folks, driving a car with damage on, you can do it. Many people have in the sim racing world and in the real world brought cars home with huge amounts of damage with gearbox problems and whatnot. And Miro right now is soldiering on, and those racing soft tyres are really taking a battering. Those left-hand ones with the damage with the front right rear axle as well, wheel axle as well, that's only going to force him to use more of those left-hand tyres, and Miro is having to really wrestle the car. And by comparison, Nico on his first flying lap a 24.1, so the Miro is matching Nico for lap time right now. This is phenomenal from Miro. He is literally doing everything he can to keep this race alive for himself and trying to get on that podium. And I do have to wonder, folks, whether it's a case that Miro has got it in him, because remember, we have still got an hour and 22 minutes, and this is going to be forcing Miro to work so hard. But we will wait and see. But right now it has spaced out a little bit, but don't switch off because there's going to be plenty of action later on in the race, we expect, and you never know what could happen right now. But Mehdi such a distance ahead of everybody, although we do know that Nico, his main competitor for the race lead, did pit, so that's why the gap has opened up as Mehdi goes out onto the gravel there at Paddock Hill and just catches the car, and it's starting to creep in a little bit. Some of the mid-race fatigue, the little lapses of concentration, and remember the GTR is that very nasty car, and of course Mehdi, a very strong driver. We know how strong he is. He's a top split FIA driver, but just a little thing starting to creep in, and that's what it's all about in these 2-hour endurance races and longer. It's the little mistakes that get you, or it's just one idle moment, it can spoil an entire race worth of effort. And as we look around right now, it seems the case that the field is quite spread out, and Nico is not able to close Miro down. He can see Miro not that far ahead of him. In fact, as we ride on board here with Nico for a lap, you can see that the gap is not too big. But again, it's worth noting here, we're going to stay on board for this lap and the next unless any action erupts. Watch the changes in racing line between Nico and Miro ahead, particularly through the heavy braking corners. What you're going to see, and I suspect Nico has been doing this to save even more tyre life, he's going gently on the brakes into corners and actually using deeper entry lines in order to minimise the braking and just let the car naturally brake itself in through downshifts. But I am hearing we have got some action or a little bit of a coming together on the start finish straight. No, that's just Mehdi lapping some of of our drivers here as Giles, hold on a second, Giles gets onto the dirt there and just catches the car. Well caught that, man. He won't have wanted to do that as Bilu, our other drifter earlier on, who had that massive drift, we should point out, and the one he well caught coming out of Dingledale down into Stirling's Bend. Well, Bilo has come into the pits and put on a fresh set of racing softs and up to 82 litres of fuel, and he's going to come out in amongst drivers here, but Mehdi finding himself in a bit of a traffic jam, having to clear a lot of drivers, and it hasn't cost him too much time. But Mehdi has got a lot to do still, as we're now going to hop back to Nico right now, and we're going to take you around a lap here and watch as we go around the lap how he's going to do the deeper braking into the corner. So coming into Paddock Hill here, he's going to brake at about that 50 board, but you'll see he'll just gradually graze the apex. In fact, he won't even make the apex curve this time. He will just let it roll up the hill here, up into Druids as Kimi comes into the pits from P6, and see how deep the line is. Now, that is a racing line up into Druids, but he's using the deep line there to extend the braking zone and then use lighter braking as Kimi switches to the hards for a single lap, and then he'll be going for a refuel. So coming back out in P6, and now coming out of Hill and up into Surtees. Again, it's going to be a very long braking zone for Nico by comparison with Miro, but you can see by taking that deeper line, he doesn't experience any of the snap oversteer, and the car just naturally steers its way up the corner. And then the run through Hawthorns here, I suspect he'll take the natural braking point of about 75 metres, and as he goes into the corner, again, just gently tucking the car into the corner, not too much wheel spin. Miro, meanwhile, going off ahead of him, and now coming into Westfield Bend, and again, actually resting in the car a little bit. I think he turned in a bit too soon there. I think he's getting a little bit loss of concentration looking at Miro ahead of it. Now up into Dingledale, and again very smooth through, coming down to Stirling's Bend, getting it nice on that 50 board there when the marshal's post is, and now coming up into the final quarter of Clark Curve here. It's going to be a case that he should just naturally flow through this one. And as he makes his way in here, you can see the difference in racing lines between the two of them. Miro literally attacking. Of course, Miro with damage to the car as well. But now it's a case that as Nico's been nursing those tyres, and he comes across the line there for what was a 124.0 on those racing mediums, which is about the pace we'd expect for tyre saving on the medium tyre. It is the case that Nico right now going for the long game versus his rivals, and it is working out as he has closed that gap to Miro and continues to press on. Now we've got somebody spun out, I'm hearing, at Surtees. It is Bilo. What has happened to the T23T driver? My goodness. Well, he's getting that car under control. So as he makes his way up into Surtees, then we're going to ride on board with Bilo. There wasn't anybody around him to have contact with. Does he just go too deep here? He does. He goes out onto the gravel, and the car just fishtails into the wall. Oh, that is a disaster. But look, he managed to avoid taking damage on the car, and that is critical for Bilu. He avoided taking any damage, as we're seeing another load of pit stops right now, and it is Kimi coming out of the pits in P8. He has dropped a spot to Giles, of course, and now we can see, oh no, yeah, he's dropped a spot to Giles. He was in P6, was Kimi. In fact, he's dropped the spot to S43 as well, and Raiko out into P9. So the two GTBE drivers doing a smart job of synchronising their stops and getting out into clear traffic. Well, Aaron's just ahead of Kimi, but he will have to move out the way of Kimi because he'll have the blue flags waved, of course, as he does indeed. Aaron being very sensible there, again out of the way at the perfect opportunity to do so. Now the GTBE drivers going long once again, and we can see that Kimi opting for another set of racing softs, as is Raiko. So I think they have got their mandatory tyres out the way, in the medium and the hard, and now they're just going as long as humanly possible. As we look further around the field right now, and can we see anybody coming close together? It doesn't look to be the case that we've got any major fights right now, although Aaron is all over the back of Kimi, probably trying to say, if only I was battling for position right now. But of course, Aaron being a lap down, he'll use Kimi to save fuel and pull him along. He won't be attacking, he'll simply be using Kimi to give him a little bit of extra fuel saving, which the Chevrolet will be grateful for, of course, because if you don't short shift it, it will consume fuel like the devil's tongue. But nonetheless, we look further in the field. Mehdi into the pits on the race lead, and this will be for a fuel stop, and we can see that Miro has been closed in by Nico right now. So we're going to keep our eyes on this, folks, but we're also aware of the fact that Cobra is coming around to complete another lap, and Mehdi is on a fuel stop. It'll be about 20 seconds for a full stop. And will Cobra come out ahead of him, or will Mehdi still be leading by the end of it? Miro under a lot of pressure right now from Nico, and as they make their way up into Dingledale, yellow flags ahead. Somebody's had a spin. It is Bilu once again, and Cobra. Well, Cobra has come out ahead of Mehdi, and Mehdi only 2.3 seconds down the road. And Miro continued his way around, or will he come into the pits this time? We'll wait and see, and he stays out for another lap. And you can see the turbo on that Nissan GTR. It just enables that gap to be stabilised on the run out of any corner where you've got this significant acceleration zone up to say 5th or 6th gear. That GTR is flying versus the rotary engine of Nico's car. As we look back right now from Miro, and you can see how Nico is now getting himself well within striking distance, and I think he senses there's blood in the water and he wants a Nash at that 3rd place. He needs to put Miro under some pressure right now, because Miro, of course, with that damaged car and indeed those very worn tyres, if he can force Miro into another mistake, that will essentially push Miro well outside of the battle for the podium. But of course, Miro is used to driving the car in such a condition right now, and he's just got to keep it together. And I'm sure the German will be able to versus the Frenchman as they're charging down the Hawthorns. A little bit of weaving. He's aware of the fact Nico's getting ever closer in his rearview mirror, and the tyres are coming to the end of their life. Nico all over the back. Will he go for the move up into Westfield? No, he won't. He stays behind. It's too close to an opportunity, and as they make their way to Dingledale now, right now, what can Nico do? Can he find a move up into Sterling? Surely not. That would be an absolutely sensational move as Miro goes a little bit wide, but he keeps it together. Miro literally dancing on ice here in that GTR. Oh, you'd love to see it. Literally the master of running the car around in those tricky conditions. And as he makes his way out the final corner here, does Miro pit? He goes for another lap. Miro, you madman, what are you doing? We love it. But of course, I don't think Nico's going to love it, because he'll want his way past as soon as possible as they make their way into Paddock Hill for the 33rd time of asking. And again, you can see how Miro could just abuse the turbo of that GTR to stay ahead, but Nico's got the tyre life now, and that turbo's not enough, and Miro gets a little bit sideways, and they come down to Hill, and you can see that Nico looked to the inside, but Miro shut the door on him at the last possible moment. Not an actual overtaking place, as we see one of the T23T cars go wide out of Hill, but Nico all over the back of the German once again here as they make their way down towards Hawthorns. And meanwhile, up front, we can see the battle for the lead. It's Cobra versus Medi, and Cobra lifted out of Dingledale, letting Medi through, I think realising it's not worth the fight right now, because Cobra is coming to the end of his stint. He's got damage on the front of the car as well. Meanwhile, Miro, he's still holding on. The damage is piling up on these drivers' cars. I'm not sure where Cobra got that damage from, but he's got front bumper damage nonetheless, and he's continuing on his way round chasing after Medi. But Nico's got to find a way past Miro. He is struggling to find a way past, and Miro is doing everything he needs to right now to cause as much difficulty as possible. And I think Miro will be thinking to himself, just go away, Nico, just fall off the cliff already. I think Nico will be shouting, what is he doing? How can he still be out there on these tyres with what is clearly must be a damaged car, the way he's wiggling it all over the circuit. And behind we can see that S43 has got Bilu actually over the back of him, but staying focused on the here and now in the battle for P3. Miro goes a little bit deep into Paddock Hill, and Nico's forced to the outside as Miro goes defensive at Druids. And as they make their way down the hill out and towards Hill, will Nico size it up the inside? No, he won't. He's wary of the fact Miro will shut the door on him, and the fight continues here. But as they make their way on the charge towards Surtees now, the turbo kicks in and the GTR pulls away once again, and we're going to stay with this for as long as possible, folks. As we can see, Miro goes a little bit wide out of Surtees, so that just cost him the momentum to keep him safe. Not through Hawthorns, mind you, but coming up into Westfield Bend as they charge down towards Hawthorns now. Miro must be coming in for a pit stop soon. As we can see, he's only got about 1 to 2 laps worth of fuel left, and Nico has got to try and find something, because this is costing him so much time, and Miro is doing this perfectly right now. He's putting literally Nico's strategy to shame as we see Cobra's into the pit, and if Miro continues to hold up Nico here, it could be the fact that Cobra will be coming out ahead of these two as they make their way in the run down towards the final corner. Down towards Clark Curve they go, and Miro stays on the racing line. Nico hasn't got the acceleration. They come out the final corner. Where is Cobra going to come out in all of this? He's coming out of the pits, and Cobra is actually fueling short. He's going for a short stint, and I think that's to keep him safe, because if he'd refueled much longer, he would have come out amongst these two, and that would have been disastrous for the TC drivers. They can't afford to let both of them fall behind. So you can see the adjustment there from Cobra by opting to fuel short, but that means he's got to put in a phenomenal stint now in order to gap open to Miro and Nico right now. And Nico's strategy has got to be adapted after this one, because Miro has thrown it all to the wind. As Miro continues to hold on, it's lap 35. We've still got 1 hour and 11 minutes to go. I don't know how my voice is going to keep up with this for much longer. And Nico has got the better run out of Surtees, and they're drag racing down towards Hawthorns for the 35th time. They make their way down towards the corner. In towards turn 6 they go. It's Nico on the outside, Miro on the inside. Miro goes defensive and Nico goes all the way round, but Miro holds to the inside, coming up into what is Westfield corner, and Miro still holds on. He's fighting literally for every corner here, and Miro is just mastering the art of being the most annoying driver. And Miro, hold on a second, he's retired the car. Oh no! We've had our first retirement literally when it was getting crazy, and Miro has retired the car. That is very unfortunate to hear. I don't know what's happened there, ladies and gentlemen, but we didn't want to see that because that was phenomenal. Oh, goodness me. That is a disaster for the V1 team, and it puts it all on this man's shoulders right now of Medi as Miro rejoins. What on earth has happened there? It looks like it's a disconnect, but that will be classified as a retirement, and Nico comes into the pits. And look, if he'd held on and he hadn't disconnected, Miro would have destroyed TC Nico's strategy. As you can see right now that Latetia has to let Nico through, whatever being a back marker, and he's gone to the hard. And this is a disaster for Nico. It has caused his whole strategy to be turned upside down. He was battling for the race win, but now he'll be battling with his teammate for his P2. But of course, with Miro retiring, that is heartbreaking for the German. He won't have wanted that for sure. Goodness me. But as we can see, the racing continues, and I think there will be some words with Miro because he's not meant to be coming back. Well, he won't be coming back into this race anymore, but we press on nonetheless. As we can see that S43 up into P3 right now. And the Frenchman, well, he'll be absolutely salivating at this. He'll be in P3 and be thinking to himself, right, it's back on right now for a top 3. I've just got to keep it clear and keep it safe. But that is a disaster for Miro. But we have to move on. And the other RP Motorsport driver of R91 in P5, well, we haven't seen much outside of our battle for P3 for some time. So let's take you back around that field, ladies and gentlemen, as everybody does deserve their own little bit of camera time, of course. And it's R91 in P5 right now, 6.4 seconds ahead of Kimi. And to be fair, Kimi is doing a good job of these races off, doing a long stint. Nico into the pits as expected to conclude that 1 lap stint on the hards, and I think that means that Nico has cleared both his medium and his hard stint now, and is now on softs until the very end of the race. And we go further down our order, of course, and we do see that whilst Kimi running that very consistent strategy, his teammate of Raikko also on a similar strategy and just nursing those races off and making them go long. So the two GTB drivers targeting midfield positions once again in this one, as we hear that Nico is coming out the pits in what is meant to be P4. Although I say that as R91 takes a wide line at Paddock Hill there, I think recognising the fact that there's no point in trying to get out ahead of Nico because Nico will just chopping back immediately. And I think R91 is due for a pit stop. Yeah, and that's why R91 has decided not to try and stay in the fight with Nico, because it would just be a waste of his time out on track right now, as R91 has got to nurse that car one more lap to get it into the pits to repair the damage and get ready for another stint. But as we look further down the order, we can see that Giles 25 seconds ahead of his teammate, but 9.5 seconds down on Raikko in P8, the lead Dodge Viper driver, having had a difficult race so far. Indeed, both of the BRT drivers have, but Giles less so than his teammate, it could be argued. What Latetia having that very nasty moment on stint 1. And Giles just comfortably in P8 cruising around. As we look further back, we can see Latetia just making his way onto lap 37 very shortly. And on a racing soft stint, indeed, he has just recently fueled up and come out on that set of tyres, so he'll be going long here. And then it is the two T23T drivers who have had a very difficult race so far. Bilu with multiple mistakes in the recent stints, which have seen him go all over the circuit, this way, that and other. You got to feel for the Belgian, who was the master at drifting the car into what was Sterling's corner, but he's made some more mistakes since then. But still, T23T, if anybody from that team is going to find a result, it will be Bilu after his legendary performance at Catalonia in race 1 of the quarter-final, where despite getting it all wrong at the start, he managed to recover all the way up the field to a very good finish in P7 in the end. And then his teammate Aaron, who is a lap down on the majority of the field right now, minus his teammate, I believe, and perhaps 1 or 2 other drivers, the Canadian running around on lap 36. But still not to be forgotten about, and doing a good job to keep on running, and that's what it's all about in motorsport. You keep going to the very end. But RP Motorsport now, having pitted and has come out in P7, he's dropped back behind the two GTB drivers, as would be predicted, and he's gone on to a set of racing softs, and I believe that means he's cleared both his hard and also his medium stint, although I'm not 100% sure on the medium stint with R91. In fact, yes, he did his racing medium stint as his very first stint, but R91 right now continuing to charge around and doing what he can to get into that top 5, but he's going to have to try and find a way to outsmart the strategies of the two GTB drivers who've got the strongest strategy in play right now, we reckon, based on our timing screens and the data available to us. As the racing continues, we see that Mehdi right now at a 30-second lead to Cobra. After all is said and done, I think Mehdi is really in the driving seat, if you excuse the pun, folks, and it is now a case of who's going to be fighting over P2 come the end. Well, remember, S43 right now, he's coming towards the end of his current stint, and he's got a gap of 31.3 seconds on this man here, Nico, who had all of his strategy compromised by running in that battle with Miro until Miro retired the car, was the disconnect issue. And what that effectively means right now is S43 is in that battle for the podium versus the two TC drivers, and RP Motorsport will be salivating at seeing a Ford GT up on the podium at Brands Hatch. They would have only dreamt of it going into this race, but it will be an achievement if it happens. And really, it's a case of placing your bets right now. I think in Cobra's case, well, the fact he's still got the best part of 5 to 6 laps to go before he'll be considering coming into the pits. Remember, Cobra had to react to Miro being out on the track for so long. They were worried, I think, TC, that Cobra would have been caught behind his teammate, who in turn was caught behind Miro, and it would have cost them so much time. So Cobra has actually gone for a short fuel stint here. This will be a fast stint, mind you, and we can tell that from his previous lap being a 1:23.0. Well, to be fair, not as fast as what we've seen from our fastest driver, Mehdi, a 1:21.8 being the fastest lap set so far, and I believe Mehdi right now is running around in the 1:22s, low 1:22s, a 1:22.2 his previous lap. That is sensational from Mehdi. These laps are absolutely monstrous from that GTR, and Mehdi really is putting the pace on a whole different level by comparison to everyone else here right now, as he makes his way across the line to begin lap number 41. And that is the question for Cobra right now. What does he do because of the fact that he's had to go onto that emergency stint, and how do they get around the problem of S43 getting into the mix between the two TC drivers? How will they work the strategies out? Firstly, if I was in Cobra's case, you're going to have to go long on the next pit stop. I fuel the car up as much as possible and make those softs go long, and use the strength of the RX Vision, which is its stint durations versus the Ford GT. And perhaps you need to take a little bit of life out of the tyres early on, get some good laps in, try and get into those low 23s, perhaps those high 22s early on. But if you can do that, then it will work out. Meanwhile, S43 from his perspective, I think what a Nico closing that gap up right now. And I say that, it's worth noting that S43 on a 1:24.9 his previous lap, and now coming across the line once again. I think S43 really is starting to hit that cliff, and Nico in fact ripping time out of him by the second per sector. S43 is going to have to go for shorter stints and go for more aggressive stints if he wants to be on that podium. We look further around the field once again, and we can see that Raiko and R91 getting ever so closer on circuit right now. And we also have Giles, who's just been lapped, we should say, by Cobra. So our closest two drivers out on circuit right now, battle-wise, would be Raiko, GTB's Raiko, who we're riding back from here. We're looking back from the onboard of his car, and we can see R91's Ford GT just closed up. It's getting ever closer. Pictures may appear a little bit deceiving, but I don't think it's the case in the case of Raiko's rearview mirrors. We'll be seeing a face full of Ford GT as it gets closer and closer under braking. And that does really seem to be the story between these two. They have been close out on circuit for the opening hour, and it is a case that they are battling for a potential P6 and perhaps even a P5 if things play out the way they don't expect to, as we can see that R91 are really closing up in Paddock Hill Bend, getting the better run with that mid-engine rear-wheel drive drivetrain versus Raiko's front-engine rear-wheel drive Mazda RX Vision. And the Ford GT just seems to have that better cornering earlier on in the stint, but then as soon as that tyre wear comes in, it's where it falls off and the RX Vision just comes to life. But R91 are really putting in a lot of effort right now to get this close. And in fact, Raiko is being closed up by a matter of margin as S43 comes into the pits, but his teammate right now on a mission to pass as we look forward from R91. Now, where would he do it versus Raiko? Well, he's got a number of options to do it. Personally, if I was in R91's shoes, you'd need to do it in the run to Hawthorns, because then you could essentially put yourself in front of Raikko and take the wind completely out of his sails, going through what is Westfield Bend here, then up into Dingle Dell, and then also Stirling Corner, because they're places where you just can't overtake. The only place where there could be a potential overtake would be Clark, but of course the Ford GT is the stronger of the two cars in the run down towards Clark, so it's a case that RX Vision won't be able to gain. And you can see running that dirty air through Stirling Corner there, R91 just running a little bit wide, putting two wheels up on the grass there, a little bit more than what he wanted, of course, coming out the corner, and it means he's now got it all to do again, and that dirty air is just costing him those little bits of time, as we do see that RP Motorsport has come out the pits, and he's short-stinted RP Motorsport. Now this is a shock. Surely he must be just going for the fastest lap here to try and get that on the board, because it's worth some extra points, but right now S43 short-stinting, that is a surprise, because we wouldn't have expected that, as he's come back out in P3, but he's not going to hold on to that position for very long, and we can see, meanwhile, Raikko literally having to put the foot down right now and try and hold off R91, who's got the good run out of hill here. Now will R91 go for a move up into 30s? I don't think he's going for it this time. He would have pulled out a lot soon. I think R91's gone for the deep line out of 30s. Indeed he has, and Raikko hasn't got the momentum he wanted, and it's going to be the move we predicted. It's the run down to Hawthorns, and surely Raikko's going to back out of this, recognising R91's got the legs. He does so. They pop back onto the racing line, and both drivers are through, but R91 now up into P6, and this could be very critical as we pass the hour mark in that battle for P6 by the end of the races. We've got yellow flags up ahead on circuit, and I think somebody has said hello to the wall at what is Stirling Corner. We're just trying to find out who has had an off, folks. Give us 2 seconds as we look further around the field, and I think it was one of the T23T drivers, as we see that Aaron and Bilu, well, Bilu has been let through because Aaron is a lap down, and let's take a look back. So as Bilu makes his way up towards what is Stirling Corner here, what happened? Bilu went what? So it was Bilu who spun, and Aaron, I see what happened, folks. My apologies, it wasn't Aaron, it was Bilu who made a mistake, spun out, let Aaron back through, and then Aaron had to let his teammate back through to be lapped once again. So that's what happened there. There's the quick story for you. Bilu finding a number of ways to get inventive through Dingle Dell and up into Stirling Corner. Of course, he won't want to do that, and the T23T team won't want to do that, but it just hasn't been their race today, and perhaps they don't feel as comfortable at this circuit, but who knows. Nonetheless, they press on and they continue racing. No retirements from either of them so far, thank goodness for that, as we see Cobra 45 is 32.6 seconds down on Medi right now. Now, given we have passed that hour mark, if you give me 1 second, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to take a very quick sip of water, as we do see that R91 has pulled away from Raikko to a 2.1 second margin. Just going to take a quick sip, and then we will give you a recall of what has happened in the opening hour of tonight's race. Well, I'd love to give you that recall, folks, but I've just heard that Kimi has come into the pits from P5, and given that R91 is still on a large chunk of his stint, this is a very important moment in that battle for P5. Remember what we said earlier about the fact that R91 was in a good position to gain places? Kimi is now in the pits doing a maximum fuel stintage, and we can see that Raikko into the pits as well, so the GTB drivers reacting to R91's pace here, and we can see that Kimi has come back out in P6, and Raikko has come in from what was a position where he still had some fuel to go and some tyre life to go, and I think what they're trying to do here is they're trying to desynchronize their pit stops from R91's. I think Raikko has pitted a little bit early to undercut R91 and put the RP Motorsport driver in a situation where he's got to absolutely hammer it. Because from Kimi's perspective right now, the gap between these two is not going to be that great. Of course, R91 is only 7 seconds up the road. Pardon me. If R91 can make this stint last a long time, do some extra fuel saving, and also perhaps even block Kimi and hold Kimi up on the rest of his stint, then R91 may find himself in a position whereby he's in that battle for P5. But of course, the reason why they've pitted Raikko now, albeit Raikko has come out behind Giles, that Giles is on a different strategy, and we can see that Giles is midway through his stint right now, so this isn't going to cost Raikko too much. The reason that Raikko has been pitted is because if we were to see that R91 decided to essentially hold Kimi up, then Kimi would be held up, but Raikko would inherit P5 out on circuit once the next round of pit stops occurred. So the GTB team switching their strategies up here in order to beat R91. It's critical for their race, and R91 will now need to respond to that. But with 56.5 minutes to go, let's give you a summary of everything that's happened. So, After an hour, it has been a case that this man right here, V1's Medi59, the French driver, has literally started on pole and run away with this race, literally holding on to it and never letting go in that Nissan GTR. He holds the fastest lap currently at 1:21.8 and is due for a pit stop at the end of this lap. His main rivals for that race win have been TC, both Cobra and Nico JVT. Cobra was initially looking to be the lesser of the challengers, but with not of an instant, but with a lot of battling that happened earlier, which we'll come to in a second. Cobra 45 is Medi's main challenger, albeit the gap between the pair of them approximately 32 seconds when Medi comes into the pits at the end of lap number 46. 42 seconds down the road right now is Nico JVT, the Frenchman, the second of our TC drivers out of the circuit right now, having been the closer challenger versus Medi in the opening stage of the race, then found himself behind V1 Miro, the German driver, the second driver of the V1 team in the Nissan GTRs, and Miro, with a damaged car and worn tyres, was holding up Nico by the best part of 2 to 3 seconds a lap, and so Nico's strategy was really cast into the wind and enabled Cobra to get past, albeit the TC team had to release Cobra early from a fuel stop in order to get him back out ahead of Miro, who was essentially becoming a rolling roadblock. So these two have had to trade places as a result, and Nico running on the lower step of the podium. We've then got an 8.8 second gap to this man right here. That is RP Motorsports S43, who right now is in a three-way battle, we believe, for P5. A four-way battle for P4, P5 with R91, GTB Kimi and GTB Raiko. And S43 is the leader of that group and trying to push after the top three. But I think it's going to be more a P4 finish, albeit we'll see how it plays out. And it is his teammate 27.5 seconds down the road from him of R91 right now, who finds himself in a position where he's battling against the split strategies of GTBE, whereby R91 is still midway through his stint and being gradually closed up by GTBE's Kimi, albeit the gap is opening up a little bit right now. What if R91 benefiting from a tow from Bilo in P10 ahead of him as he makes his way up into Hawthorns? R91 will of course be looking to open that gap up as much as possible and hoping that Bilu gets off the racing line very shortly, obeying those blue flags. He'll be grateful for that. It's then GTB Kimi, who is 8 seconds down the road, the Belgian driver having just recently pitted and charging after R91 as quickly as possible. And it is BRT's Giles in P7, who is 6.9 seconds down the road. And the Dodge Viper driver having had a quiet race. It's been the quieter of the races for the BRT team, where Giles having a much more consistent run of laps around the circuit compared to his teammate, and Giles just comfortably in what is effectively P8 when the strategy is all said and done. And behind him at 17.8 seconds down the road is GTB's Raiko, who's recently pitted and gone for a long fuel stop in order to try and get ahead of R91. We then got a 3-second gap to Rico Lutetia from BRT, the second of our Dodge Viper drivers, the Frenchman coming up into Sterling's corner right now, lap 46. And it's been a disastrous race for Lutetia in the opening stints for that mistake at Surtees. He's done well to recover to P9 and is trying to recover all the way up to what we believe would be about P7, but he's got a long way to go. We've then got the first of our two T23T drivers of, oh goodness me, what's happened to Bilu there? Let's find out as he rejoins the circuit. So R91 got past and in, and I get the feeling Bilu's going to go a little bit wide off of hill here and run up the hill, and the rear right tyre is going to say, no, I haven't got any grip, sir. And indeed it does, as he, oh goodness me, he ran onto the runoff road there with the AstroTurf, and that caused the car to bounce back onto the grass. Well, that is going to be a damaged car from Bilu there. In fact, he's got engine damage. He's going to have to put that in the pits, and they're going to have to repair the car. That is not good news for the Belgian, who right now the lead of the two T23T drivers in the Corvette. Both drivers having a very difficult race, and his teammate Aaron a lap down on him as they both make their way into the final couple of sectors. The Canadian having a difficult race as well, but T23T not having a strong day at the circuit, but Brands Hatch just hasn't been at the circuit for them from what we've seen. But you never know what could happen in the remaining 52 minutes. Miracles do happen. But that's really the story so far, and as we look around the field right now, the closest battle we are expecting out of the circuit is that battle for P4, P5, P6, P7, which is ranging from S43 all the way down to GTB Raiko. Although we will see what happens, of course, as we can see that R91 now into the final third of his current stint, and Kimi is closing up gradually by a couple attempts a lap, it would seem, and Kimi just starting to close the distance to put the pressure on. And Kimi, of course, right now on what is the midpoint of his current stint, And Giles, by comparison, we suspect is coming into the final third of his stint. The Dodge Viper driver here, I think, just simply trying to focus on doing what he can, and if the places open up later on in the race, then so be it, because he is on for a comfortable P8 right now, albeit I think he would have liked to have been in the battle for P7, P6, but Giles, I just don't think has the pace in that Dodge Viper to get the position through lap pace. If he's going to do it, it'll be through strategy and things coming to him as time goes on. But again, not to knock the driver, he's done a phenomenal job so far, and we'll see what he's able to do. We've got Raiko right now chasing down the Hawthorns, and Lutetia just coming after. And Lutetia, of course, in a very offset strategy, coming to the end of his current stint, whereas Raiko is only on the early stages of his stint, as you can see by the fuel and tyres there. Now, meanwhile, looking further the field, we can see that Bilo is continuing around circuit. He switched to the medium and he's let Nico through. So Bilo doing the pit stop to repair the damage on the car and going to the medium in order to get it out the way. So using the opportunity of the pit stop there. Indeed, his teammate Aaron has unlapped himself from his teammate, but Aaron just being a little bit further up the road, I think they're going to both be coming back together in short order. But really, as we see that Medi, well, my apologies, ladies and gentlemen, I thought Medi couldn't go faster. Medi has just recently improved the fastest lap to a 121.772. I'll be honest with you, I think the scrutineers are going to be looking at those GTRs afterwards, taking a look to see just what they've got underneath the hood. Jokes aside, of course, folks, that Nissan GTR very, very strong in circuits where it's not exposed in 6th gear and where it doesn't have to run too often in 2nd gear. And well, if anybody's going to do it, Medi and Miro, the combination there. And Miro, we should point out, folks, was in this race but retired the car after a disconnect issue, and that was a disaster because Miro was on course to really upset the battle for the podium with Cobra and Nico and was looking to be a potential P3 or P2 contender, but now it's all on the shoulders of Medi to be the one who finishes in the top spot for Team V1. That's really what it's been for Medi, just running away right now, and who can blame him? If he's on a roll, he should absolutely go for it, but not over push it. Of course, we have seen a couple of times Medi just getting a little bit on the edge, borderline running off the circuit. I think he knows his limits. All the drivers will, of course, know their limits here. A good number of these drivers you will see in top split or second split FIA races in the EMEA region, and well, phenomenal drivers up and down the field. As we take another quick sip. But with 50 minutes to go now, I think it will really be the case that we are waiting to see how the strategies play out and what cards are dealt through the strategy now, as we do see a driver coming into the pits, and that is, I believe, Aaron coming into the pits off of the racing hard. So our last place driver right now going for his mandated pit stop, and he decides to switch on to what I suspect will be a set of softs, and he'll also go for a full tank of fuel. Now the question, of course, will be with regards to this battle for P4, what we can see this battle, not for P4, for the P5 battle. In the case of R91, what are the facts? He's only got about a quarter of this stint to go. A gap of 6.1 seconds to GTB's Kimi, and as we look at the telemetry data, we can see that Kimi coming towards the final third of the stint. So what do you do in R91's situation here? Given that you've got Kimi, who is closing you down on circuit and running a similar type of stintage to you, and then you've got Raiko, who is a long way down, but he is catching up to Giles very gradually. But of course, Raiko is going for a very long stint. In the case of R91, I think what you have to do here is you have to pick one of the two drivers who you're effectively going to choose to race with. Now, if I was in R91 shoes, I would go for shorter stints because that's where the Ford GT is going to excel. I'd say, to hell with saving fuel, go for it. Because in doing so, you guarantee to get ahead of one of the two drivers. If you try to play the game of longer stints, then you play into the clutches of what they're doing by splitting the strategies, and you open up the door to Kimi pushing and Raiko choosing to push at any point. Because remember, the RX Vision is the stronger car with tyre wear over the course of a stint, whereas the Ford GT needs its tyres to be in its optimum region to push. So that's why I'd say throw caution to the wind in the case of R91 and just go for it. Because you haven't got long left in the race, you may as well make a gamble right now because every second is going to count. You've got the shorter pit stop here as well, so you may as well play that to your advantage. As we do look around, and we can see that S43 has just got past Milu, lapping the driver, and now making his way down towards Surtees. we're going to ride on board here with R91 as he takes us around at 4 laps. So coming up into paddock hill, seeing go, he's for a very low braking position there, and with those worn tyres as well, cost himself a bit of time. I think he might have made a little bit of a mistake on his braking zone there. Now coming up to Druid's Corner, of course, and again going deep here. I think R91 choosing to take some deeper lines rather than going for the more aggressive lines and coming down into Hill Bend. As Giles comes into the pits from what was P7, that'll drop him down into what I think will be P8, as we do have a yellow flag up ahead on this corner here. And what has happened? We have got Aaron into the wall. What has happened to the T23T driver? I get the feeling this is going to be a runoff up the hill of Surtees. He's going to go a bit deep. Does he go wide? Oh, he does. He goes wide. And the car, well, he got it beached into the gravel. That was nicely beached by Aaron. It could have been fatal. He could have gone charging off into the wall, but he got it beached into the gravel and then pulled it out. Nicely worked there by the Canadian driver, and he carries on his merry way. Of course, you don't want to see him go off, but when they do go off, you want to see him keep it out of the wall, and he did a very nice job there. As Giles has come out of the pits, he's put in a maximum amount of fuel, and he's also, well, he's decided to go for a set of racing softs once again. He's got Bilo just ahead of him, but Bilo will have to move out of the way very shortly, of course, and Giles in P8 right now. Well, I think Giles could actually be on for potentially throwing himself up into that fight for P7, P6 if he can clear Bilo. Bilu doesn't hold him up too much here, and Bilu goes wide into Surtees, I think, to let him go, albeit that's not probably where he wants it, and that's a little bit of a drag race up towards Hawthorns here, and surely Bilu's going to lift out of this one, because Giles will be losing time here as Bilu is fighting this, and I think there's going to be a bit of a word in the stewards here with regards to Bilu obeying blue flags at this point, because Giles will feel he is losing time, and indeed he has lost a second and a half to that alone. And that is costing the time to get into the battle for what is effectively P6, P7 right now. And his teammate, 15.9 seconds down the road, Lutetia, is catching up as a result of this. Both drivers going for the racing softs and going for a maximum tank of fuel here. But meanwhile, looking further around the field, we can see that the crew are out for Nico's car. Nico coming in the second of our two TC drivers right now. And RP Motorsports S43 going long here. And the question will be, of course, can he get himself into that fight for P3? He's got a little bit more stintage to go. He's got about, I'd say, 5 laps to go in that Ford GT before he's got to pit. But, of course, the offset between the two of them is that S43 has got a significant time gap as far as we're aware to make up versus Nico. So I think S43 right now is playing for keeps in terms of holding on to P4. And if Nico makes a mistake, of course, S43 may be able to capitalise as a result of that. But as we look further around the field, in terms of drivers closing up, it's R91 into pits. Now, this is crunch time for the RP Motorsport team. It's all going to come down to this pit stop. We can see that Kimi stays out on circuit. So Kimi continuing his stintage. Meanwhile, what about Raiko as he makes his way up to Dingle here? Raiko, the best part of 35 seconds down the road and closing up gradually. Where is an R91 going to come out in relation to this? Well, they're putting fuel in the car right now, but remember, right, they've put the fuel in the car. How much did they put in? 80 litres of fuel. So that means he has cleared Raiko for the time being. But remember, Raiko has still got half his stint to go, and on top of that, he will have the better pace on the worn tyres. And now, it really will be the case for R91. He has to nail this next stint. If he can nail this and Kimi's not able to keep the gap as long as possible, he can't keep it to that 18.8 seconds and it starts to come down. Because remember, Kimi right now is due for a pit stop very shortly. I think R91, if he carries on with this and keeps it together, may have jumped Team GTBE for the 5th place. Because of the fact that Raiko will need to close up to R91 over the course of the next 2 stints. Meanwhile, Kimi has got to find a way to get in the way of R91 to bring him back into that fight. The split of strategies has not worked so far, and you can see that by the gap. But of course, it's all to play for, and we still have 42 minutes to go. If I was in Kimi's shoes right now, I would try to fuel short and go for a fast stint. I'd go for a qualifying lap stint and see if I could get myself enough time ahead of R91. Alternatively, just get myself out ahead of R91 and then become a rolling roadblock right now if I wanted to try and get Raiko back into that mix as well, because that's what needs to happen. Raiko going for that very long refuel was an attempt to essentially get him into a position to contest R91, but it hasn't got him there the way they had hoped. And the gap between the two of them right now, between R91 and Raiko, is 9.7 seconds, and it is stagnating about there. But of course, once R91 gets those tyres switched on, it will open up a little bit, and then Raiko will start to close it down, of course, if he doesn't hit the end of his fuel tank life. by the time that gap between the two drivers' tyre compounds closes up. So it's a little bit of change in fortunes right now. GTB on the back foot as a result of the RP Motorsport team strategy, but we will wait and find out with bated breath as we look further around the circuit. And, well, not much to say about Mehdi once again, although I say that, my apologies, I'm not laughing at Mehdi, I must apologise. I look at that fastest lap board and think, how could it get any lower? And then Mehdi decides to make it lower for 121.6. And you've got to feel for Cobra right now. Has not put a foot wrong, neither has really Nico, but both drivers just not able to chase down that GTR. As we can see that S43 and P3 right now coming to the end of a stint in probably the next 3 to 4 laps and doing a good job as S43. The gap between himself and Nico 16.6 seconds, but remember Nico has pitted about 5 laps ago, so Nico, well not 5 laps ago, 2 laps ago, so Nico right now of course will be on a longer stint by comparison with what S43 is on, but it's how many pit stops are remaining for the two drivers. That's the big question. Now at this point I would say for Nico, you're probably looking at one more stop after this if he can stretch this stint as long as possible and then stretch the next stint. In the case of S43, are we looking at 2 stops or are we looking at 1? And that will be the question on the 4GT driver's mind, because remember the amount of fuel he's got left right now, I think we're looking at 2 stops for S43. I don't think he can make the fuel tank and the tyres last one more stint. So that would be approximately 34 minutes, and in that 4GT that is going to be, well, the first 20 minutes will be comfortable, but those final 14 minutes will be the worst 14 minutes that you'll ever want to experience in a car right at the end of a 2-hour endurance race. But we will wait and see, of course, with what S43 has planned, what ace he's got under his sleeve, as we see that B-Lou is coming out of the pits. They're releasing him with a full fuel tank and he's coming out on the soft tyres. The T23T team using this race really now to source as much data as possible and pick up any spare points should they have the opportunity arise. But as we look further around the field, once again we can see that Nico in P4 right now. Well, it is going to be the case of, will Nico be able to close that gap down to S43 at a good rate? And he is. He's closing it down by about 7/10 a lap versus S43. Nico's previous lap being a 1:23.2, meanwhile S43's lap being a 1:23.8, so 6/10 there, but you can see that S43 coming to the cliff of tyre life and indeed the cliff of that stint as we would expect. Meanwhile, looking further around the field, we can see that Charles, the P8 driver right now, is about to be lapped by Mehdi and letting the GTR driver through, letting our race leader through, of course. And we can see further around the field, we have got 2 drivers very close together coming down in towards Hawthorns. And who is that for your reference? That is Kimi, who's just got past Aaron. Aaron having to lift off, of course, and let Kimi through. But we can see that R91, in the fact with that 14.9 second gap to Kimi just putting away a little bit at this time. I think Kimi has been given the word to get a move on now by his race director because of the fact that R91 is effectively in the stronger position strategy wise. And remember, with 40 minutes to go and R91 only recently pitted, he's only got one more stop to go. Meanwhile with Kimi, well, Kimi is at the end of his stint come this lap. So what will Kimi do now? Now, if I was in Kimi's shoes, he's got to play it one of 2 ways. Will he go for the 2 stop and he's going to have to put in 2 qualifying stints, or will he go for the 1 stop and try and squeeze the stint out? I think given the car and Kimi's driving style, we could be expecting this to be his final stop, but he'll have to fuel it all the way to the end. Now RP Motorsport, of course, is coming across the start-finish line to begin lap number 58. Will Kimi go for the long stop here, or will he go for a shorter stop and try to essentially do 1 more stop after this one? It's going to be all to play for Kimi here, and Kimi going for the 36%, so that means Kimi, I think, will be going for 1 more stop. So he's going to go for the aggressive stint as Raikko pits as well, and the GTB team synchronising their stops here, and I think they're both going for faster stints. And it'll be the question, which of the 3 in that battle for P5, as we see Giles coming across the line here. And actually, Giles could be a little bit of a cork in the bottle for Raikko. But certainly if Raikko comes out of the pits here and Giles is ahead of him, and Giles is in fact, so this is a real cork in the bottle as Raikko fuels to 87%. I don't think that's going to be enough. I think he really needs to go for the 100% to make it all the way to the end. And Giles right now, he's going to have 1 more stop to go. But I think he could have found himself right in the mix here of what is a 4-way battle for P5. And Giles really is going to be the surprise. As we look further around the field, of course, and Raikko with a 7.2 second gap, and he's going to need to close that down as quickly as possible to Giles right now, because that is not what he's going to have wanted to have seen. He will have wanted to come back out in P7 and know that his teammate's only up the road. And to give you an idea, Kimi is 22.1 seconds up the road from Giles, who's yet to pit, of course. So this is not a good place to be. And R91, well, I mean, R91 now has got the advantage, and he just needs to nail these last two stints. Of course, we're assuming that all of our drivers here have got their mandatory medium and hard stints out of the way, and I believe they all have. So R91 in the driver's seat here for a top 5 finish, and this will be fantastic for R91, who only found out the other day that he'd be a stand-in for JDM, but he's done a fantastic job so far. And as we look further around the field, we can see that S43, he's going to be coming in at the end of this lap, so he's on lap 60, as we can see that the gap between himself and Nico has dropped to 11.5 seconds. As, hold on a second, is that Medi coming to lap P3? So it ain't so, folks. We are seeing Medi literally lapping almost all the field, and I mean, he's got 35 minutes to go. I don't place your bets on whether he's going to lap Cobra. I don't think he is somehow, but that is a monstrous pace from Medi. Not to detract from any of our other drivers, it's not to be an insult to our drivers, but I think a number of our drivers will take it as insult to injury that Medi is coming through to lap a podium driver right now. This is something else entirely from the Frenchman. But meanwhile, as it continues, we can see that Cobra, 51 seconds down our race leader, really in a little environment of his own, in a bit of a no man's land, and I think really just not seeing much else happen out on circuit. He just needs to bring that car home, and it'll be a solid P2. And Cobra really has been one of the stories of how consistency is so strongly rewarded. But meanwhile, S43, he won't want to get out of the way of Medi because he's coming in at the end, and surely he's going to have to try and send a signal to Medi somehow. Look, I'm coming into the pits. He's got his warning lights on. I think he's trying to say to Medi, look, I'm going into the pits. My hazards are on. Do not try to use me. And Medi into the pits as well. Okay, this is quite comical, because that means Medi right now will be right back behind S43. That's going to be something which S43 won't have wanted to see, as both drivers in on 1 litre of fuel. And now the big question, of course, this is going to release Nico up into P3, and we believe that Nico is due one more stop. But will S43 be due another stop? 35 minutes, and he goes for 75 litres of fuel. So I think S43 will need one more short stop right at the end, but he has got Medi right behind him once again. And he immediately gets out of the way. He lets Medi go. I think he recognises the fact that Medi would be breathing all over him and flashes his lights to say, you're clear, let's get back racing. And now R91, this is the driver, of course, who is in that big battle for P5 versus Kimi, Giles and Raiko. And we can see that Giles right now in P7 is not being closed up by Raiko and Brayton. In fact, Raiko has actually dropped a bit of time to Giles. So Giles here is gradually pulling away with P7, we believe, with all of these drivers expected to at least one more pit stop. And then Lutetia in P9 right now, only 4.3 seconds down on Raiko. Albeit I think Lutetia, well, he's on a midpoint of his stint right now. Could he get in the mix as well on Raiko? We're not 100% sure on that. That would be something that the BRT team may be trying to manufacture in order to give Giles the best possible opportunity to get that P7, which would be a huge achievement. But right now, the man who's really just got to keep nailing laps is R91. If he can do this, I think he will have sauntered off with that P5 with 33 minutes to go. It's going to be close come the end of it. Place your bets now, ladies and gentlemen. I think personally R91 has done it, all said and done, because unless Kimi or Raiko have got something up their sleeve, they've got an ace up their sleeve or something we do not know about, they've got to try and find a way to close down what is effectively a gap on track of 11 seconds minimum to close down R91, who's just really come into this race at the mid to late stages. As we look further around, we can see that Medi running his way out of Druids down in towards Graham Hill Bend for the 63rd time of asking right now. Medi, I think, just literally running along and enjoying the experience. And will he be going for another fastest lap? Well, I mean, if Medi's going to at this point, what else can he achieve? I mean, a 121.6 is phenomenal on a set of softs around here in the GT3 machines. Could he be going for a 121.5? We'll wait and see. A little bit of slipstream, of course, would help with that. And the gap between himself and Cobra is 29.9 seconds. Cobra coming to the end of a strategy stint, however, so it will mean that the gap will open back up to the best part of about 55 seconds once Cobra is done in the pits. But that's how it's been for a good chunk of the race, really. Medi just in a world of his own. And Nico right now 13.2 seconds ahead of S43, and Nico of course will have one more pit stop to go, as will S43 we believe. So I think all said and done, Nico has consolidated that P3 with one more stop to go, and S43 just has to keep putting in the solid laps and seeing if he can close down the gap, or if Nico were to make a mistake and then have to recover from off circuit, that could be the podium for S43. But of course, commentators curse forbidding, we're not hoping to see that. But as all of our drivers continue to make their way around the circuit right now, it is a little bit spaced out right now, ladies and gentlemen, as we have a yellow flag for Aaron. What has happened to the Canadian here coming out of what appears to be Westfield corner? Let's just take a look back. I think he's just simply run a little bit wide onto the exit curb, and the car's got clinched on the exit curb and gone into the wall. And in fact, he went a little bit wrong on the brakes there, and the car just decided not to flow through the corner, and he had to get it back under control after it spun out. That's unfortunate for the Canadian, but you've got to love his spirit, ladies and gentlemen. It deserves a round of applause nonetheless, carrying on until the bitter end, and that's what you love to see as he makes his way into the pits. But looking around right now, we do see that we've got a number of drivers banched up, and we can see that Medi trying to clear Lutetia coming up into Dingledale. It's the last place you want to have to clear a back marker at Dingledale corner. It's so tight around there, but Lutetia doing a very good job to get out the way at short notice, and I think Medi's going to be very grateful for that. And S43 will want the same respect now shown to him as he's making his way up towards what is Clock Curve, and now they're coming around to complete another lap, and S43 will get the toe of Lutetia on this straight. It's one of the longer straights to the circuit, of course, and S43 will take every little bit of slipstream we can get as they make their way onto another lap. And I think Lutetia is going to pull over to the right very shortly, as we just see S43 making his way up the hill here and in towards Druid's corner once again, smelling the back right now, smelling all the exhaust fumes off of that Lutetia, and as he makes his way down towards the hill, it's cleared the driver once again, and our back markers being very respectful for the most part here, all finding their way out the way of our race leaders where they possibly can. So with 30 minutes to go then, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to give you a quick recap of the field after we've had another sip of water, and we've only got a quarter of the race to go. So with what is less than 30 minutes to go, a quarter remaining, our race leader currently is V1's Medi in the Nissan GTR GT3. Having qualified on pole, he has led this race from start to this point right now with a gap of 33 seconds ahead of his main competitors, albeit that gap is going to open up to the best part of 53 to 55 seconds when his second place rival comes into the pits very shortly. His second place rival, of course, being one of the two TC drivers, that being Cobra 45 in the Mazda RX Vision, who has benefited from the misfortunes of his teammate, where his teammate got caught behind V1 Miro, who retired midway through the race, but Cobra was able to rework the strategy to get back out ahead, and we can see that is Nico 40.9 seconds down the road, who is currently in P3, although I suspect will be getting closer to Cobra once Cobra has pitted. That gap should be in the region of approximately 8 to 7 seconds once all is said and done. Nico in P3 right now, just making his way through it and consolidating what is expected to be a minimum of a P3 position. It's been a difficult race for Nico, but he's done a solid job nonetheless. And then it's RP Motorsports S43, who really has been the best of the rest outside of the podium. And whilst he hasn't had enough to challenge for the podium, as far as we're aware, he won't have the ability to challenge for the podium now. Well, the fact he's due one more pit stop, as is our podium finishers. S43 putting in a solid performance in the Ford GT, and really that has been his story throughout the entirety of the quarterfinals. It's then 32.7 seconds down to his teammate R91, who is on course right now to finish in the top 5 and bring home a 4th place and a 5th place for RP Motorsport, more than being in a 4-way strategic battle with Kimi, who at some point we can see that Kimi has made a mistake somewhere in the fact that that gap has opened up massively. It was in the part of 10 seconds, it's now 27 seconds, so Kimi has made a mistake somewhere out in the circuit, so I think that has ended the battle for P5. Kimi being that 27 seconds down, but still Kimi having run a solid race to be in P6 and doing his best to finish there. As we see Giles right now, a bit of an unknown in that Dodge Viper at the start of the race, having had a difficult start along with his teammate, albeit he's had the better start compared to his teammate. And Giles right now holding on to P7 due one more stop, and really I think has surprised Team GTBE, and particularly this man here, Raiko in P8, who finds himself 12.4 seconds down on Giles, and Raikko trying to go long in order to get around RP Motorsports R91, finding himself well down the order and out of sequence and behind Giles instead. And it's only a 2.8 second gap to the P9 man of BRT, Rico Lutetia, in the other Dodge Viper, who is chasing after Raikko right now, and we believe Lutetia is due one more stop, as indeed they all are, but we could see a surprise between the two of them here, and perhaps we'll see the two BRT drivers finish alongside one another come the end of it. T23T make out our last two drivers running around the circuit right now, Bilo being their lead driver in the Corvette. The Belgian having had a very difficult race with a number of offs, as we see Cobra 45 in P2 coming out of the pits, going to the medium to most likely complete the race. But Bilo having had a very difficult race and just not the best of ones tonight, and neither his teammate T23T's Aaron, who the Canadian driver having had a very difficult one. Both drivers at least one lap, if not more, down on the rest of the field right now. But still, they're all soldiering on, and with 26 minutes remaining, I was going to say 26 seconds remaining, that's not the case. 26 minutes remaining right now. I think our field has closed down to some sort of order, and now it all comes down to that concentration factor, and of course those tired legs kicking in and just nailing the remaining quarter of the race. And to be fair, it has not been a quiet race. There has been a lot of action, a lot of drama, and the one person who we wish we still had out on circuit, of course, that had that disconnection and therefore that retirement, was V1's Miro, the German in the second of the GTRs. Unfortunately, that retirement in what was shaping up to be a huge battle for the podium between Miro, Cobra and Nico, but it was not to be today, unfortunately, for the V1 driver, and that's some clinical points on the board wiped off completely. But where he's had that disadvantage, TC have inherited. But nonetheless, as the race continues and we're winding down to the final 25 minutes, we can see that really S43 right now coming towards the midpoint of his current stint, and the gap between himself and Nico is closing down gradually. We can see it's holding around that 10-second margin, but S43 is trying to get it down to under 10 seconds. Now, I think it may be the case that perhaps S43 feels that at the end of this stint he can go for a couple of qualifying laps and potentially try to rip the time out of Nico, but surely Nico would be reacting to this if that were the case. But meanwhile, Cobra only 14 seconds up the road from his teammate. They won't be seeing too much of one another, but they'll know they're there and they're only around the corner from one another. And as we look further around the field right now, we can see that the gaps are growing more sizable by the second. And the real closest gap we have right now is Raikko to Lutetia, albeit that gap has opened up to 4.5 seconds from the 2.9 seconds when we last looked. I think Lutetia's had a little bit of a mistake somewhere, or has had a bit of difficulty in getting past the back marker, or is just simply hitting the cliff. And I'd say it's actually the cliff, given the tyres are starting to look worse for wear, and the fuel is getting quite low in that Dodge Viper. But we continue all the same. And to those of you who have been with us since the start of this race, be sure to let us know in the chat who has been your driver of the day. We'll appreciate it as always. But as they continue to make their way around, 24 minutes to go right now. Personally, for me, as Medi goes a bit wide there at a Dingle Dell, let's just take a look back at that. I think it's one of those little ones where you just simply run a tad wide and you have to immediately settle the steering in. Or was that just a little bit of lag off of Medi's car there? I think it was a little bit of lag rather than anything else. But Medi definitely pushed the limits here and tried, I think, to find an even faster lap out of the circuit. But surely, Medi, it's done. It's over. You don't need to go any faster than this. But nonetheless, I mean, he's only he's coming up to lap Nico right now. Nico is your P3 driver for reference, folks. I don't think Medi's going to lap the entire field, but this is one sensational run from the GTR driver, I tell you that. But for me personally, I'm not going to announce my driver of the day yet, because I'm waiting to see what's going to happen in this battle for P5, 6, and 7, and 8. It could be anyone's game. As we do see Lutetia right now in P9 has fallen further back off of Raikko. I do think those tyres are starting to hold Lutetia back in terms of pace, and it will be a case that BRT's second driver is going to be coming into the pits at the end of this lap, given the fact that car is on bingo fuel. If it's not this lap, it will definitely be the end of lap 69 for the driver as he makes his way out towards Hawthorns right now. It's been a good run from Lutetia though, given the fact it's been a recovery drive, but it's still been solid, and to be within that arm's reach of the guys ahead coming into these final stages just shows how much he's had to recover. It's been a bit of a bridge too far though in terms of being able to get into those fighting positions, but still he'll build on this and take it forward. The recovery drive has been a solid one. But this stint is definitely coming to an end. You can see he just hasn't got the confidence to run the car through Dingle Dell anymore. As we see coming into the pits is BRT's Giles, the two drivers synchronising their pit stops, and Giles into the pits for what is expected to be a critical pit stop here. Where is this going to bring him out in relation to the GTB drivers who are yet to pit? Of course, they're due for a pit stop within the next few laps. We expect that Kimi will be coming in within the next 3 laps and Raikko will be coming in within the next 6 laps. As we see Lutetti comes in, Giles is back out very shortly. He's going to be fueling the car up here, and they go to what is a total fuel of 100 litres, so full fuel here. This is going to be full attack because you wouldn't put that much fuel in otherwise, and Giles will now be on a charge. The Frenchman's going to have to absolutely go for it here, because if he nails these out laps, he could find himself jumping Raikko and perhaps even creeping into a fight with Kimi if Kimi makes a mistake or just can't get those tyres switched on. But as we look further around the field right now, we can see that really in terms of the gap open up, well, Cobra has been lapped by Medi, or not Cobra, Nico has been lapped by Medi. We can see that here. Nico, our P3 driver right now, ceding the space to Medi. And as they continue to make their way round, this, with 21 minutes to go right now, is not really the fight that's existing anymore. It's more of a case of who is going to be coming home in our final top 5 position. I think it's going to be R91, because he's coming towards the end of his current stint, as Kimi has also got a little bit of stintage to go here. Sorry, we just had our data flash off our screens briefly there, folks. Little technical glitch, no worries about that. We've got that sorted, but we can see that Kimi coming towards the end of the stint a little bit later than R91. How is he going to respond? Well, I don't think he's got an ability to respond. I think R91 has cleared him in a half with some sort of mistake, but it is Giles right now who, given the fact that Raikko is 26.6 seconds down on Kimi, and then the gap between Giles and Raikko is 19.4 seconds, well, that is the best part of what is a 40+ second gap. So I don't think Giles is going to be able to jump Kimi through the pit stops. There's no way that's going to happen. I think Giles is going to be in a commanding position for P7, and then it's just about whether Kimi can nail things home for P6 in the end. As we see, Bilo has come into the pit from what was P10. The T23T guys doing their final service for their lead driver right now as he makes his way out the pits for his final stint of the race. Everybody getting in their final pit stops, of course. And in fact, we see that S43 is up into P3. What if Nico pitting? But that gap is 18.1 seconds now for S43, given the fact that he's got what is the best part of, I'd say, 5 laps remaining before he comes in. Although he's got a little bit of tyre wear concerns. We can see him going wide there out to Stirling Corner. What do you do in this situation if you're S43? Do you come in early? Do you come in as late as possible? I think for S43, if you wanted to try and just scare Nico into potentially driving a little bit too fast and making a mistake somewhere on the lap, what you may decide to do is go as long as possible and perhaps convince S43 you're trying to go to the end, because if you can go as long as possible, then you shorten the amount of fuel you need to take on for your final stint. And remember, it's a 13-second time loss approximately for the tyre change. So if he was able to do it and take on a little bit of fuel, he could come out, say, 5-6 seconds down the road from Nico, and then it would be a sprint to the finish, which S43 would enjoy more because the Ford GT is the sprinter of the two of them. But we'll wait and see, of course, because Nico, on what is the racing soft tyres right now, well, Nico will be in a very comfortable position and he won't feel obliged to react immediately as RP Motorsports R91 comes into the pits and he takes his final stop of tonight. A solid tyre change there from the team, of course, as they're putting the fuel in the car right now, and I believe this is going to bring him comfortably back out in front of Kimi. Kimi still making his way around the circuit, coming into Clark Curve right now, and RP Motorsport will be coming out of the pits as Kimi comes into the pits here, and I believe Kimi coming in early, conceding the fact he will not be finishing in P5 tonight, but instead pitting nice and early, so that way he's able to cover off Giles. And Giles, to keep in mind you ladies and gentlemen, has just pitted for his final stop, and now it's down to Raikko, who has to react to Giles pitting. Now, if you're Raikko here, what I'd say you do is you come into the pits immediately, which he does, and he'll try to fuel the car as little as possible and then go on a chance to chase down Giles. So the final fight really out of the circuit right now as Kimi comes out of the pits will be the battle for P7, which Giles will be leading, we believe, as he makes his way through Clark Curve here, and Raikko is in the pits right now. We expect Raikko is going to come out somewhere in the region of about 10 seconds down on Raikko, but then what can Raikko do to chase down Giles over the course of the remaining laps? So Giles has made his way into Paddock Hill Bend right now. He drifts his way into the corner there, using the drift to get rid of the understeer in the car and force some oversteer, and the gap between the two of them is a window of 5.5 seconds. So Raikko here could close this down. He's got the best part of what is about 10 laps to do it. Let's see what Raikko's able to do. Of course, he's put a lot of fuel in the car. He will be on an attack lap right now. He'll be attacking to the end. Can he close it down versus Giles over the course of the remaining stint? Now, are we expecting any more pit stops from anyone? That's, of course, the big question. I don't think so, although we have got somebody coming into the pits right now, and that is our race leader for what is expected to be his final pit stop of the evening. And S43 will be coming into the pits probably within the next 2 laps. I think he's got about 2 to 3 laps worth of fuel remaining. The gap between himself and Nico, 17 seconds. So S43 doing a very good job of keeping this stint long, and S43 will have Medi coming back out in front of him, and I think he'll be grateful if Medi could give him a little bit of a tow up towards Druids, just a tiny tow perhaps, just to give him a little bit more speed up into the corner, and perhaps downhill into Hill, and perhaps even into Surtees. Of course, that would be a nice one, because that would just give him a little bit of a time gain, but of course he'll have to compensate for the understeer that's invoked with the dirty air off of the back of Medi's car. But both drivers making their way down towards Surtees right now, and of course I think at this point Medi is now going to start to break away as S43 comes out of Surtees here, and he'll be hoping just to clutch onto the back of that slipstream just a tiny bit longer, but you can see Nico has pulled the best part of a second out of S43 over the first 2 sectors alone, I should say, and I think it is here that Nico is now getting the move on and realising that he can't afford to just run the car gently around the circuit. He does need to just take a little bit of life out of the tyres and a little bit more fuel in to guarantee that he's going to be ahead of S43 when S43 pits within the next 1 to 2 laps, because S43 will be the best part of, I'd say, about 8 to 10 seconds behind him once all is said and done with the final pit stop. But we will wait and see, of course, as S43 is making his way down towards Clark Curve on lap 74. So we passed lap 47 a long time ago, my boy. But as he makes his way all the way onto the start-finish straight once again, one more lap from S43, but you can definitely see how Nico has now got the hurry on order, because that gap has dropped over the course of this lap alone. It's come down by a window of 1.6 seconds, and that is Nico getting a move on, getting the hurry up to go for it. Now Cobra, of course, going to the end on these racing mediums, I believe, although he may be looking at perhaps a quick stop to go for fastest lap right at the end. He can afford to. He has got the time and space to do so, and that's the nice thing for Cobra right now. You don't have any pressure on you, so you can turn that wick down. I think Medi will feel the same way, but Medi being Medi right now, we have seen him literally charge around the circuit as much as possible. As we see in the pits is the T23T machine, the second one. That is the sister car of Aaron, the Canadian driver, going in for his final pit stop, refueling the car to 59% and going for one last push, as he has to give way to Rico Letizia, making his way out of the first corner there, out of Paddock Hill Bend, and all resumes between these drivers. Now, S43 making his way through making his way through Dingledale right now. You can tell that it's wearing into myself, folks, here, but as he makes his way out of Stirling Corner once again, S43, this is surely going to be the pit stop that we expected. He takes a nice tight line, and he's got one more lap to go, and then he'll be in as Medi comes in and actually was on the medium there. So Medi getting his mandatory stops out of the way, and that is a good point. We saw him use the harder Leon, but we didn't see him use the medium. So he's got his stintage out of the way, but he's got so much time to play with Medi. He could probably go away, make himself a coffee, and quickly come back. Jokes aside, of course, that's the gap he's got in terms of a relative comparison, and Medi just simply can ride this one to the end now with 13 minutes to go. And Cobra really now will notice that and know that there is no way of coming back unless Medi were to pick up engine damage after making a major mistake. But as I say, I think from Medi's perspective, he can turn the wick down now, as has Cobra probably, and just simply keep his eye in this one till the very end. But S43 charging down towards Hawthorns once again, and you can see that Nico taking that lap time to pieces. S43, for comparison, a 123.9 on his previous lap, whereas with Nico on the previous lap it was a 122.5. So that is 1.4 seconds alone stripped out on lap 75. That's the differential between these two drivers. And in that battle for what is effectively P7 out of circuit, I'm pleased to announce right now that Giles is leading that battle for P7 by 6 seconds. Raikko not gaining, but he has got enough of a gap to hold off Lutetia. We believe that gap is 10.2 seconds, and Raikko able to maintain that gap to Lutetia, but not able to close down that gap to Giles, the lead BRT driver, pulling away. So I think it's going to be a case that Giles will have recovered to P7 in the end. As we see S43 into the pits, it's the mandated stop, and Nico will be coming through Clark Curve right now. And how far back will S43 be once this is all said and done? Well, they're servicing the car in the pits right now. S43 will be putting fuel in the car as they're putting the fuel in here. He'll be coming out the pits any second now, and he will probably see Nico just off in the distance, and the gap is a window of what is all said and done 8 seconds. So there you go, ladies. Well, 7.5 seconds in, so not quite what we estimated. In fact, a little bit less. Now, S43 has a choice, of course, as Medi comes into the pits again. Oh, hold on a second. What has happened to Medi? There's engine damage on Medi's car. No, this is a disaster. He's picked it up somewhere, and surely we didn't get to see it, but if he's picked that up anywhere, they've got it repaired, of course, but that's a penalty as well. But Medi, it's creeping in right now, and that gap between himself and Cobra coming down to what is going to be, I think, in the region of about 20 seconds. Once they come across the line here, what's that gap going to be? It's now 15 seconds. That is going to be a scare for Medi there. He must have got it wrong coming out of Dingle Dell, because they have damage on both the front and the rear of the car, and engine damage. It's not all over yet, ladies and gentlemen. We've got 11 minutes to go, but that will be the scare for Medi right now. Also with that time penalty, which you'll gradually have to burn. We are not at the end yet. Remember, it's not over until you've crossed the line and the checker flag has been waved as you do so. And Medi, I think right now, he's thinking to himself, right, just turn the wick down. He'll be probably getting it whispered in his ear as well, turn it down, because at the moment, if he bins it once again, if he does something like that again, we are going to be seeing TC clutch a win out of this one, and that will be an absolute nightmare. As you can see, he goes wide again at Dingle Dell. Medi just needs to get his composure back in, because this is not good, and you can see he's flying already. He's trying to put in monstrous laps once again. What I think he really just needs to think about turning it down to 80-75%. He doesn't need to be pounding it around right now. And of course the TC team right now will be giving Cobra a hurry up to say, Medi is making mistakes and we know you're on the mediums, but can you try and close that gap? And in fact, Cobra will have to come into the pits because he hasn't got enough fuel to go to the end. With 9.5 minutes to go, unless he really short shifts out. I think Cobra's going to be coming in for a quick stop right at the end. So it's all drama right at the end with regards to our race leaders right now. But I think Cobra will be securing P2 as a minimum. As we can see that Nico is gradually being closed up by S43. The gap is now down to 6.9 seconds. It's closed up by the window of 6/10 over the last 2 laps. Could S43 spring a surprise here versus Nico? I mean, if he's going to, it's going to be through sheer pace alone, or Nico making a mistake. Because right now S43 has got to make up that gap. And given the lap time, it's 1 minute 21. Well, let's say it's 1 minute 22. By best estimation here, folks, we've got about 6 laps remaining. I don't think he's going to be able to do it with time alone on his side. Nico surely has got to make a mistake somewhere, but it's all going to pan out. We've got 6 laps, potentially 7 laps to go for each of our drivers here. What is going to happen by the end of it? Who knows at this point? I mean, R91 will be happy. He's in PE5, having a very casual time around the circuit. Meanwhile, Kimi in P6, well, he's safe and sound in P6. But Giles right now, not being closed up by Raikko too much. That gap has come down a little bit by 2/10. You can see Raikko in the rear of your camera shot there as we're coming up the hill out of Paddock Hill Bend up into Druids. And you'll see him in the rear of your camera shot very briefly once again. And Raikko is hunting down Giles right now. And the two of them, if we look at their telemetry, you can see that both drivers are safe on fuel. But Giles has got a lot of tyre wear, and Raikko, I think it's now coming into his stride in terms of the tyre life situation. And as Raikkonen makes his way down the run towards Hawthorne, straight down towards Hawthorne's here, that long stretch down, we can see that gap is closing a little bit through the corners, and that's something to be aware of. Lutetia, meanwhile, in P9, not able to close up to Raikkonen. That gap has opened up to 10.7 seconds, and I think that's where it will stay for the time being. But Medi right now, having cleared that penalty, I think has settled down, and we'll wait to see as Cobra is on almost bingo fuel. He's not going to be getting to the end on these racing, well, on that fuel tank. He may use those mediums all the way to the end, but the fuel is not in his favour. And we can see that S43 still closing that gap up very gradually, and he's using every bit of track. And the last lap, to give you an idea, was a 22.2 versus Nico's what was a 22.8. So 6 tenths is being closed up a lap by S43. He is going for it. These are qualifying laps on the Frenchman here, chasing after his fellow countryman, of course, and the RP Motorsport team will literally be shouting for him to give him everything. He's got all engine modes available to him, every little bit of fuel available, and he'll be throwing the kitchen sink as well, as the proverb says. But as we're waiting to see, with regards to S43, that gap is down to 5.9 seconds. If it's going to happen, it will be right at the end. I think they'll be in camera shot of one another. You could see just up the road there out of camera shot was Nico making his way out of Westfield Corner as they make their way down towards Dingledale now and up the hill once again. And you can just tell that S43 can smell that podium. It's just off in the distance. It's just that little way around the corner, and he'll want sight of Nico. Once he gets sight of Nico, that's an extra 10% motivation in his mind, and that will give him the push to go even faster. Nico has got the fuel to go to him, but the tyres are starting to wear off versus S43s, which are in the prime of their life right now. Of course, they will be wearing after a couple more laps, but he is closing down that gap. The last lap, for comparison, was a 122.3, as Medi has set an even faster lap, ladies and gentlemen. A 121.5. Medi is going once again. I mean, he doesn't need to, but he's trying to push the fastest lap even further down, and Medi is just pushing like mad. But really, we're not too worried about that right now. It is all about S43. Can he close up that P3 by the end of it? It's 5.5 minutes to go. And also, if we look further back, we can see that Charles right now is being closed up. Well, I said it was being closed up, and Raikko has fallen back again to 5.5 seconds. I think Raikko has made a mistake somewhere, and he's had to let Medi through. That's why, and as a result, he's not closing up. But the big question will be, who will be on that final step of the podium? Will it be S43 from RP Motorsport, or will it be Nico JV2, who's literally just up the road, and both drivers giving it their all right now as we stay with S43 for the time being, and he will be upset as he goes just a little bit deep off of Dingledale there. S43 literally using every bit of track width, and that's just going to cost him a little bit of momentum as he comes down towards Clark Curve here, and it's those little mistakes now which are going to be so crucial as he comes around to start lap number 82, and Nico will know that S43 is pushing it, and he just simply needs to keep that gap. As they make their way down towards Paddock Hill then and up towards Dress, and you can see S43 getting the tiniest bits of slap oversteer out the corners right now. That Ford GT is literally on the maximum limit with regards to grip, I should say. And Nico responding in kind. The laps by comparison, the last lap a 122.6 from Nico versus what was a 122.1 from S43. S43 literally pounding it around right now. We wanted Kimi to get out of the way, but of course right at the end of Hawthorne's, not at the start of the run to Hawthorne's, he'll want Kimi out of the way. He'll use as much tow off of that Mazda as they make their way up towards the corner. Kimi lifting out, of course. S43 getting that little bit of extra speed as they charge up towards Hawthorne's and now to Westfield once again, and he could just see, he sees Nico getting closer and closer ahead of him. We ride on board from the Ford GT driver. You can't see Nico right now, but as he comes over Dingledale, you'll see there's Nico at the front of your picture, and as he comes into the braking zone for Sterling, once again, that is going to be a case that the gap will close up. It's closed up as Cobra's in the pits, ladies and gentlemen. Remember this, Cobra is into the pits right now, but there is a sizable gap, we believe, between the two. Although, how's this going to play out? Because remember, he's going to be putting in a tiny bit of fuel to go to the end, and will this be that S43 comes out ahead of him? Cobra's onto the hard tyre, and that means Cobra Cobra's been jumped by S43. My goodness, no. We didn't realise that Cobra hadn't done this hard stint, and that means now S43 is up into the podium, and Cobra has got to respond on hard tyres with only 3.5 minutes to go. Will there be even more drama? Say it ain't so, folks. Can S43 pull off the second place? This is going to be incredible if he does it. I don't think there's enough time, but that is an absolute shocker there, as we're waiting to find out right now. But this is absolutely crazy. You couldn't predict this. And S43, they're both charging down towards the corners here, and we can see that Cobra just will not be able to respond. Those hard tyres just cannot get activated, and Kimi, you can see, is so frustrated because he's trying to say to Cobra, look, you're meant to be the faster driver, and he's unlapping himself because those hard tyres, for reference, ladies and gentlemen, are the best part of what is 1.8 seconds down on a fresh set of softs, and even the worn tyres, those soft tyres are so much stronger. But that gap, 3.2 seconds, I think the Ford GT has hit its cliff. I think Nico is responding just enough right now. It's going to be so close. They've got 2 laps to go, the pair of them. And we're going to wait and find out as they're making their way down towards what is Paddock Hill Bend and then up towards Druids for the second to last time. I mean, Mehdi is in a world of his own still. Let's not worry about Mehdi. He is our race leader and our race winner at this point, unless something crazy happens there. Of course, we've already seen some dramatics from Mehdi, so don't rule it out. But then meanwhile, we can see that Cobra in P4 will not be able to close up. And then look at this, R91 in P5 doing such a fantastic job right now. And then Kimi, well, in P6 and safe. Giles in P7 and safe versus Raiko. We believe that gap has dropped to 4.5 seconds, but not enough. And then it's all spaced out there. But we come back to that battle for P2. It's 2.6 seconds to gap as they're making their way through Hawthorne. So we look back right now from Nico's car here, and you can see that little set of headlights in the distance is the Ford GT of S43, who senses the P2. He can see it, and he'll be begging for a couple more laps. He'll know that he could get it with 1 or 2 more laps to go. But surely as well, if he can't close it down, he'll back it off towards the end of the final lap and settle for that P3. But 1 more lap to go for both of these drivers as they're making their way around right now, and it is a case the gap is 2.1 seconds. I think it would be a case that Nico has to make a mistake here for S43 to be in the striking distance as they make their way onto the final lap, and Mehdi will be getting in an 86th lap, whereas these guys will only be doing 85 laps. The gap has closed up by 1 second, and Nico is right at the end of those tyres. They're both on bingo fuel as well, though S43's got enough to rev the absolute nuts out of that engine and that 4G. So that V8 will be absolutely doused in fuel right now as he makes his way out of Hill Corner. You can see that ever so close, and making their way up into what is Surtees Corner for the last time. S43 goes a little bit deep, and that costs him some time. As meanwhile, as they all come around to complete their final laps, we're just looking around the field to who will be our first driver to complete their race tonight. S43 is not close enough right now. I think it's going to be the case that it is going to be Milu in the end who will be finishing his race off first, and it will be RP Motorsports R91 who will also be coming along behind him. So after 82 laps, it is going to be T23T's Milu who will be coming home in P10, and it will be R91 from RP Motorsport in P5. Congratulations to both of them for a phenomenal set of results. We look back to that battle for P3, so for P2, and we can see that Nico holds on in the end by what is 1.3 seconds ahead of S43. Congratulations to the pair of them. Nico home in P2, S43 in P3. A valiant effort from S43. It will be in the end Cobra coming home in P4, as we can see that GTP Kimi comes home in P6, and it'll be Cobra in P4 with that shock moment at the end. It'll be Aaron in P11 at the very end of the race, and it'll be Mehdi, our race winner, ladies and gentlemen, lap 86. A phenomenal drive from the Frenchman in this GTR, and it'll be BRT Giles Wood. How about that? The Dodge Viper making it home in P7. A phenomenal drive all the way home, and then it'll be Raiko in P8 as he makes his way out of the final corner, crossing the line on lap 84. And then our final driver to cross the line right now will be the second BRT driver of Rico Latetia, who after 84 laps bring it home in P9. A great recovery drive from Rico. What an ending to tonight's racing. Congratulations to all of our drivers, but to our race winner in particular, Mehdi from Team V1. What an absolutely phenomenal race. I mean, you can't make it up, ladies and gentlemen. You just cannot make races like this up. But as we look at the race results, subject to any Stewards inquiries, of course, we can see your final standings are Mehdi, 59, bringing home the win in the Nissan GTR GT3. A good round for manufacturers there of Nissan, finishing the only driver to make the 86th lap in the end, despite having that major off midway towards the end, bringing it home in P1 ahead of Nico, who held on to second place by 1.3 seconds ahead of RP Motorsports S43. A phenomenal drive to third from the Frenchman there in the Ford GT. Ford will be very pleased with that one. The second TC driver of Cobra 45 with that late stop for the hard tyre, coming home in P4, a disaster there on the strategy call, and RP Motorsport getting two drivers in the top five with R91. A brilliant drive there, being the reserve driver there for RP Motorsport in this race, bringing it home in P5 to round off our top five. The fastest lap on lap 80 going to Mehdi, a 1:21.558. And our driver of the day, personally, ladies and gentlemen, for me, it's got to be S43. A phenomenal drive in that Ford GT. He didn't quite have enough to come home in P2, but what a way to get a car, which is a bigger lug of American machinery, around a very tight and twisty circuit and get a solid result in the end. But really, ladies and gentlemen, that was a phenomenal ending to what has been a brilliant set of three races for the quarterfinals. And whilst I don't think any of our drivers will be up for a post-race interview, or at least not in the English language, although we will ask, of course. We'll just see if anybody's up for a quick interview. But that really marks the end of our quarterfinals. So now the big question, of course, will be what happens next? Well, in a week's time, we come back for the first of the four races of the semi-final. So after tonight's races, there's been Pool A, Pool B, Pool C. The points will be tallied, and that will determine which of our 12 teams make it through to the semi-final. And then we'll have our lobby split accordingly. There'll be a Pool A and a Pool B for the semi-final, and we'll be casting one of those two for you over the course of the next 4 weeks. I don't think anyone's going to be up for an interview in English tonight. So that is going to be the conclusion tonight. But it has been a pleasure bringing this to you as always, ladies and gentlemen. And we also say a big thank you to our race host, of course, GTS-BOCA's Tosh. As we say, merci for hosting. And as we just await quick confirmation that we're definitely not being called back. Yeah, we're not being called back for interviews. The drivers who would have been able to interview have left, unfortunately, but nonetheless, hopefully next time. It's been a pleasure to bring this to you, but I have been your host, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. And this has been the Binome Manufacturers Elite Endurance Cup Season 6 quarter-final Race 3, Lobby C. And remember, come back this time next week for what will be the first race of the semi-final. But until then, remember, stay safe, stay smiling, stay positive, but most importantly, stay on track. Good night.